Chapter 806. The moment the black spiral spear pierced into the white giant's heart, heaven and earth stopped. No longer howling, no longer moving, like a stone sculpture. The white giant quietly floated in the air, and the pitch-black spiral spear that pierced into its body emitted a strange aura that made people feel extremely uneasy. It was like the oppressive atmosphere before a storm over the ocean, making people unable to breathe. In the sky, the roaring flame demon sword and red lotus-tusked lion flew left and right, trying to get close to the white giant, but they were unable to get within 100 meters of the white giant. Every time they got close to this distance, there would always be an invisible wall blocking the roaring flame demon sword and red lotus-tusked lion's advance. The radiation claw was shining with an unknown light, attacking the invisible wall over and over again, but it was still unable to break it. TSK, what the hell is this? After a few attempts, State Zero finally gave up the idea of continuing to attack. Maybe the scene in front of him was too familiar. So much so that Ray Minkai almost said a unique name. But what happened next made things take a turn for the better. Pa! Ta! The white giant that was pierced by the black spiral spear broke. Yes, the cracks that could be seen with the naked eye first appeared from the white giant's hands, then from its feet, spreading all the way up. The web-like cracks quickly tore the white giant's body apart. In the span of a few breaths, the insufferably arrogant white giant had shattered like a broken ceramic doll. The only thing missing was that it became fragments and fell into the ocean below. Darkness, chaos, nothingness. This was the world that Mariana saw after she merged with the white giant. This was also the world that Mariana was pursuing. World. After Mariana experienced the confusion of waking up in this world, she looked at the chaotic world that was like the beginning of the universe with ecstasy. Not knowing why, the moment understanding rose in Mariana's heart, the chaos world changed. The light that represented the birth of the universe, the light that represented the condensation of stars, and the light that represented the birth of life exploded in front of Mariana's eyes. Once again and again, the light that kept bursting out washed Mariana's heart, as if it wanted to push Mariana, a human, to a higher peak. This was the moment she had been pursuing. It was also the dream that she pursued. At this moment, the world had become a world that existed for her. The world. Yes, just like that. My world. Mariana's mind gave a high cheer. However, at the instant the fixed star condensed and appeared before Mariana, a pitch-black bolt of lightning split apart the void and the chaos, shattering the fixed star before Mariana. The terrifying shockwave caused Mariana's mind to be shaken, and she couldn't calm down for a long time. When she woke up again, she was shocked to find that her body had been penetrated by a pitch-black spiral spear. His hands were unconsciously gripping the black spiral spear that came out of nowhere and stabbing it into his body bit by bit. No! Mariana's screams were incomparably shrill. The writhing body seemed to want to make a final struggle. However, he was unable to move his hands away from the pitch-black spiral spear. Night, it's over. Poor man. The illusory figure sighed softly. As the collective body of human consciousness, he saw Mariana's ending. Rumble. In the void, there was an explosion of thunder. The white giant that was pierced by the pitch-black spiral spear broke apart. The moment it broke apart, it burst out with a brilliance comparable to the sun, completely enveloping the sky under its brilliance. In the dazzling brilliance that eroded the sky, the white giant's wings suddenly expanded. From only 10 meters in size, it suddenly expanded to 100 meters, 1,000 meters, a few thousand meters. It was a terrifying giant wing that was even enough to cover half of the sky. Under the giant wing, the raging flame demon sword and the red lotus long-fanged lion seemed so small. Kai! The red lotus long-fanged lion moved slightly, but it was stopped by the raging flame demon sword. State Zero. Wait! The shocking change in front of him, the scene in front of him, made Ray Minkai almost exclaim in surprise. The third impact, however, This was not the third impact in Rei Minkai's memory, because as the protagonist of the third impact, Lilith did not exist in this world. The white giant that was pierced by the pitch-black spiral spear was just a creation from the world of sea, even if such an astonishing change had occurred in its body. This point, whether it was the illusory figure or the following development, it was all confirming this truth. It exploded. In the midst of the rumbling sound, the white giant exploded at the moment when the giant wing occupied half of the sky. The white exterior turned into flames that filled the sky, rolling across the sky. The moment it fell into the ocean, it set off huge waves and swept towards the farther horizon. Or it swept across the sea and flew towards the farther land, wantonly igniting the fire of disaster that swallowed everything on the land that was full of vitality, bringing disaster to the creatures living on the land. It exploded. The huge steel lion slightly opened its huge mouth with terrifying sharp teeth. It could be imagined that this scene brought a huge impact to the long-fanged Lion State Zero, who was prepared for a bloody battle. In contrast, Rei Minkai's reaction was much faster. The afterimages left behind by the raging flame demon's sword as it rapidly flew through the sky. The faint lights that disappeared in the blink of an eye were the traces of the raging flame demon's sword as it flew through the sky, blocking the flames that filled the sky. You're not stopping now. Rei Minkai was concentrating on driving the raging flame demon sword to blow up the flames that might threaten the imperial capital, Pandoragon, and said to the illusory figure wandering in the cockpit, "Sorry, we are no longer able to affect the world of sea." Unfortunately, the fact that came out of the illusory figure's mouth was a fact that Rei Minkai could not accept. What? Isn't all of this caused by you? Now, you say that you are unable to affect the world of sea? Above the sky, the sea of flames set off by the white giant's explosion seemed to be endless, constantly sweeping across the sky, with rolling flames, toward the ocean below, towards the distant sea, and even towards the land far away from here. Even if he couldn't contact the rear, looking at the horrifying scene, Rei Minkai had already guessed that this was a global disaster. What could Rei Minkai do? The only thing he could do was to drive the raging flame demon sword to blow up the meteors in the direction of the imperial capital, Pandoragon, as much as possible. The only existence that could stop all of this claimed that it was already powerless. Roar! In the roar of the beast, hundreds of missiles rose into the air, chasing the meteors across the sky, blowing them up one by one. In the roar of the explosion, in the scattered sparks, the dark green steel lion stood firmly on the sea. Kai, you only need to intercept the biggest one. Leave the rest to me. Okay, I'll leave it to you. Although the tacit understanding between the man and the lion reversed the threat facing the imperial capital, Pandoragon, in a short time, they who were intercepting the meteors did not notice that the white giant that was inexplicably blown up had undergone more astonishing changes. The white exterior turned into a sea of flames, sweeping across the sky of meteors, and a black-red circular core condensed on the pitch-black spiral spear that pierced through the body. In the swaying flames, a brilliance like the galaxy burst out from the center of the black-red circular core. At the same time, a low murmur that was initially inaudible, but became clearer and clearer, descended from the void. Boom! The Bang's a long-fanged lion, who had pierced through a meteor with a diameter of tens of meters with a plasma beam cannon, suddenly raised its head, and a trace of surprise flowed out of its long and narrow, pale, golden eyes. Kai, it's that airframe. The airframe that ran out of the egg. In the exclamation of State Zero, reflected in the long and narrow golden eyes, was the old acquaintance who had previously fought with Rei Minkai and State Zero. The wings that spread out to the left and right of the head. The holy and sacred white armor. It was like the supreme brilliance when the gods descended. That was the voice of the winged god. No, that's not the winged god. No, that's a projection. Rei Minkai and the illusory figure denied State Zero's exclamation one after another. However, even if it was a reflection, It had already proven that the real culprit that caused Mariana to leave the world of sea. Is this what you want as well? Ray Minkai saw the projection that descended from the void and stepped on the black-red core left behind after the white giant's explosion. He knew that all of this was caused by the lingering parliament of destiny. No, the illusory figure shook his head, as if he wanted to explain something, but gave up in the end. Now it's not the time. Night. Now, the world has reached a crisis where we can no longer spare the energy to take care of other things. The moment when the whisper from the void became clearer, it was the moment when the song that once resounded in the sky of the Predator Barbados world reappeared. At this moment, it was not the original body, but the afterimage of the winged god. It wanted to reproduce the scene of that time in this world again, using the white giant that Mariana transformed into as a sacrifice. No, it shouldn't be like this. Under the projection, in the black-red core, Mariana's screams that she could not accept the current situation rang out. The body that was pierced by the black spiral spear kept twisting. The hands that were holding the black spiral spear were struggling with all their might. She could not accept all of this. Looking at the projection that descended from the void, Mariana could not believe that she was a sacrifice. What a mess. Princess Mariana. In the black-red core, an illusory figure quietly appeared. He looked coldly at the woman who was pierced by the black spiral spear. The smile on his lips was so mocking. You, Emperor, this is your conspiracy. Mariana screamed unwillingly when she noticed the appearance of the illusory figure. Conspiracy? Hey, compared to you, my little tricks are nothing. The laughter of the illusory figure was so mocking and carefree. Yes, this was the backup plan that the Emperor left behind before he was killed by Lulu Xiao. No one thought that after the Emperor died, the backup plan that should have been abandoned would be activated. The world was so wonderful. No, it shouldn't be like this. I have clearly obtained eternity. Eternity? The Emperor laughed a few times, and the mockery in his eyes became more and more intense. Your Highness the Princess, perhaps you don't know that there is such a sentence. What? Mariana was taken aback, and her face suddenly panicked. The panic on Mariana's face made the Emperor feel a little happy. So, he raised his arms and shouted, "The world is like an egg. We are fledglings. Give me the power of the revolutionary world. World, merge!" Amidst the loud shout, the pitch-black spiral spear suddenly twisted and pierced through Mariana's body with an unstoppable force. The moment it pierced through, it transformed into a huge iron net and dragged Mariana, whose eyes were filled with unwillingness and a ferocious expression, into the depths of the black and red core. Mariana v. Britannia. Now, become the sacrifice for the birth of a new world. Endless brilliance erupted from the depths of the black and red core and rushed into the sky, enveloping the projection of the winged god that descended from the void. In just a short moment, the projection that shouldn't exist in this world actually materialized at a speed that ordinary people couldn't imagine. Perhaps, in less than a few minutes, this projection would turn into a physical entity that could subvert this world. At this moment, the blade slashed down, and the red lightning behind the sword light erupted from the blade, stabbing at the head of the winged god's projection like a fatal dagger. The materialization began from the head of the projection. However, the blade slashing down from the sky and the red lightning transformed by the red lotus long-fanged lion only left ripples on the winged god's projection. Dimensional fortress? Even if it had begun to materialize, the winged god's projection was still in a different dimension that the fiery demon sword and the red lotus long-fanged lion could not reach. Could it be that Ray Minkai and State Zero could only watch helplessly as the winged god materialized from the projection? At this moment, a passionate song came from behind the fiery demon sword and the red lotus long-fanged lion, and quickly resounded throughout the sky. In just a moment, this passionate song actually suppressed the holy song that resounded throughout the sky when the winged god's projection descended. Patrol Officer Ray Minkai. Patrol officer, he Mimi requests to join the battle. In the passionate song, the fiery demon sword received a signal from behind. It was he Mimi. When the brilliance of GN particles scattered across the sky, the girl who once fought against the winged god appeared in front of the winged god once again. Chapter 807. The passionate song echoed in the sky, and the Void Walker was already confronting the winged god's projection. In Raymond Kai's eyes, the feeling brought by the two sides was like a singer standing on a stage and fighting tit for tat. If one could ignore the rolling thunder, lightning, and even inadvertently break apart to reveal the terrifying pitch-black space in the sky, perhaps this would be a feast for the eyes and ears. Did they fight? After the Red Lotus long-fanged lion slashed the last fire meteor that could threaten the capital, Pandoragon, he raised his head and looked at the two sides who were fighting through the song. It looks like it. The arrival of Himimi might be able to let Ray Minkai breathe a sigh of relief. But there was also a limit. No matter who it was, when they saw the cracked sky and the unknown object behind the crack that faintly emitted a terrifying pitch-black space, no one would treat it as a strange weather phenomenon. The world is changing now. Night. While the illusory figure murmured, he also looked at the Void Walker who was confronting the winged god's projection. However, the appearance of that airframe slowed down the speed of the world's change. What are you talking about? Ray Minkai noticed the words of the illusory figure. This collective of consciousness born from the depths of C's world seemed to hide some secrets that he didn't know. Perhaps it was because the white giant that Mariana transformed into had been shattered. Or perhaps it was because of the amazing changes that happened at this moment. The illusory figure seemed to no longer insist on what Ray Minkai didn't know and finally told the truth that was hidden by him. Night. From the moment you came to this world was led by a force and gradually moved closer to other worlds that we don't know and have never watched. The illusory figure raised his head and looked at the winged god's projection that was materializing but was constantly disturbed by the Void Walker and Himimi's song. At first, we thought it was just an encounter. However, as time passed, with the appearance of you and the Emperor, the earliest idea became like a joke. The meeting between two worlds is not as beautiful as we imagine it to be. It is cruel. Perhaps, in a dimension that we don't know of, a similar encounter would be a beautiful outcome. But judging from the Emperor's behavior, this encounter was nothing more than a battle to devour each other. The only one that survived was the world that could tear apart and devour the other worlds. For this reason, you did not hesitate to pull Mariana back from the abyss of death and support her. Ray Minkai raised his hand and pulled over the foldable keyboard on the right side of the driver's seat. As he entered instructions, he gestured for AL to cooperate with his actions. The scene in front of him was not a battle that he could casually intervene in. However, it was impossible for Ray Minkai to just watch and not do anything. Having personally experienced the first battle with the Winged God, as well as the battle with the Black Bow Angel, Ray Minkai knew very well how serious and intense the following battle would be. That was just us saving ourselves. The illusory figure looked at Ray Minkai's actions and listened to AL's instructions and data. Then he shook his head slightly and said, "It's like a drowning human grabbing onto the straw that might save him." After a pause, the illusory figure continued with a sigh. As a result, everything we did was just a futile struggle. Mariana, who we regarded as a life-saving straw, became the key to pulling this world into the abyss. Really? In that case, I'll have to ask you to stand aside and wait. With the input of the last line of instructions, a strong tremor instantly spread throughout the cockpit. At the same time, AL's sharp warning sounded. Warning! Warning! Restriction lifted! Restriction lifted! The Raging Flame Demon Sword's heat dissipation system will reach its limit in 15 minutes. Please immediately ignore. Al, didn't you already cooperate with me to lift the restriction? Ray Minkai rolled his eyes and then scolded. Your Highness, that's just a routine procedure. Please don't mind it. AL's rebuttal made Ray Minkai speechless. Okay, This guy also learned how to make jokes at critical moments. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The power of the lambda drive system was pushed to its peak at this moment. The ultra-high heat generated by it also quickly spread into the atmosphere with the light wings of the raging flame demon sword. The heat wave that was visible to the naked eye, the high temperature that distorted the light, it made the raging flame demon sword seem to be a veritable raging flame sword. Rumble. A terrifying rumbling sound came from the broken sky, making the creatures who witnessed the shocking scene of the sky breaking run away. But in the imperial capital, Pandora, it was strangely quiet. In addition to the pedestrians who fell to the ground on the street, the Lionheart Knight who was standing guard at the street entrance also stopped moving and became a dead object that could not move. Beneath the rumbling sky, there was no sound. In this strange imperial capital, there were many people. A convoy quickly drove in from the imperial capital's gate. After identifying the direction slightly, it sped toward the palace. Fortunately, although the pedestrians fell to the ground, they seemed to have been properly placed on both sides of the road. What the hell happened? Whether it's the front line or the imperial capital, people fell to the ground. On the mobile engineer at the front of the convoy, Olga frowned and glanced at the unconscious people. The scene in front of him gradually overlapped with the strange scene that Olga witnessed when he led the Iron Flower Regiment to support the Empire's frontline legion. For unknown reasons, except for them who came from another time and space, the humans in this world seem to have lost their consciousness. The reason was probably the strange pattern in the sky that collapsed before the sky broke. Commander Olga, please speed up. Lakis's voice came from the headset. Understood. Olga responded and immediately ordered to speed up. After the convoy that sped up, it was the MS driven by 3 suns and Moon, Sinnoh, and Eugene. They were also stunned by the strange atmosphere around them. Not long after, when the Iron Flower Regiment's convoy arrived at the palace, they saw the subordinates, led by Princess Islam, waiting for the arrival of the Iron Flower Regiment at the gate. Thank you for your hard work. Commander Olga, may I know where the ambassador is now? Islam, who was wearing a long white dress, stepped out of the crowd and came to the front of the convoy. She looked at Olga and asked softly. Before Olga could respond, Lakis's voice came. I'm here, Clerk Islam. With the sound of footsteps, a familiar light flashed in front of Islam's eyes, and Lakis's original appearance also appeared in front of Islam's eyes. That included the necklace that Athylam had given to Lei Mingkai. However, Ethelium only glanced at the necklace on Lux's white neck before turning to the side and pointing at the depths of the palace. Your Excellency, Ambassador, please follow me. His Majesty is waiting. Thank you. Although Islam only glanced at it, Lakis still keenly felt Islam's attention on the necklace she was wearing. Sometimes a woman's sixth sense was very scary, but the two standing here were not ordinary women. When their eyes met, they knew what to do at this moment. Commander Olga, help Clerk Islam's subordinates settle down the people. Yes. The two women quickly arrived at the Lee Palace where Euphemia was. As soon as they entered the door, they saw Euphemia, who was holding the unconsciously Lena in her arms and confronting the white figure in a wheelchair. Your Majesty, Islam exclaimed and subconsciously reached for her waist, pulled out a small pistol, and aimed at the white figure in the wheelchair. Lux, on the other hand, frowned. She recognized the white figure. Although the white figure was very blurry, Lakis still recognized that the figure in the wheelchair was the person in the coffin that she and Ray Minkai saw in that strange space. Islam, calm down. Euphemia raised her hand and stopped Islam. Your Majesty. Islam moved and slightly blocked in front of Euphemia. Calm down. Islam, she means no harm. Yes. The white figure did not have any ill intentions and even ignored Islam, who was pointing a gun at her. From beginning to end, the white figure's gaze was only on the sky, except for glancing at Euphemia from time to time. It was not until Lakis appeared beside Euphemia that the white figure moved her gaze from the sky and fell on Lakis. You're here as well. As the faint voice sounded, the white figure quietly disappeared, leaving only the voice that confused Euphemia and Icelam and made Lacus frown. "Thank you." Then thunder and lightning struck in the sky. Thunder rumbled, and bolts of lightning from the shattered void struck the raging flame demon sword, causing the force field of the Lambda drive system to flicker. The powerful force from nature kept pressuring this powerful body built by the peak of human technology, forcing it to stay away from the projection of the winged god. What's going on? Magic attack? Or is that broken thing able to control lightning? The flame demon sword was not the only one who suffered the same fate, but also the red lotus fang lion. Hold on. At this moment, Himimi's voice sounded in Ray Minkai and State Zero's mind. Most of my power is now suppressing the materialization of the winged god's projection, and I don't have much power to support you. Hold on a little longer. Nana will be here soon. Hold on. Himimi's voice sounded a little strained, and she added a sentence unhappily. TSK, if you bring the Skyfire equipment, these things are not a problem at all. However, the collective consciousness from World C spoke. No, distinguished guest from another world, these are our own matters. Then, a bright red light suddenly appeared on Ray Minkai's forehead. In the brighter light, the figure of the collective consciousness appeared in front of Ray Minkai. It was the girl with shoulder-length hair who awakened Mariana from the abyss of death. She pressed her forehead against Ray Minkai's forehead and whispered softly, "Since the fusion of the worlds is unavoidable, then, in this time and space where world C and reality are becoming more and more blurred, once again display the power you displayed in front of Charles. Summon the incarnation that has the power comparable to God into this world again." Chapter 808. There might be a clear boundary between illusion and reality, but in reality, this so-called boundary was blurry most of the time. A glass of wine in one's mouth, when one fell into a beautiful dream, that was when those with weak willpower fell into illusion. At this moment, when the void broke and the winged god's projection descended, illusion and reality were no longer separated. Perhaps at this moment, humans could still feel the stinging pain from their wounds. Perhaps at the next moment, the stinging wound would become numb again, as if it did not exist. The moment the red light on Ray Minkai's forehead condensed into the Geas wings of light, the shoulder-length short-haired girl had already moved from in front of Ray Minkai to behind him. She gently let go of her hands and put her palms together in front of Ray Minkai's heart. "Night, summon. Summon the existence that once displayed supreme power in C's world once again." The girl lowered her eyes slightly and stared at Ray Minkai, whose mind was affected by the Geas wings of light. "Hey, woman, what did you do to Kai?" State Zero, who vaguely felt that something was wrong, ignored the danger of being hit by the void thunder and directly sent his holographic projection into the cockpit of the fiery demon sword. "Lion, we mean no harm. We're just asking for your help." "Asking for help? Isn't it because of you that things have gotten to this point?" The red lotus long-fanged lion, who took a hit from the void thunder, roared angrily. State Zero's angry voice echoed in the cockpit of the fiery demon sword. "So, now we're doing everything we can to make up for it. Lion, this is our last strength." Suddenly, the cockpit of the fiery demon sword shone with red light. The GASS wings of light had completely condensed on Ray Minkai's forehead. In the blink of an eye, a violent gust of wind blew in the sky. The terrifying sound of the wind and the powerful force greatly affected the Void Walker, who was suppressing the winged god's projection. What is Ray Minkai doing? This kind of spiritual fluctuation. This sudden gale was naturally swept up with a raging flame devil sword as the center. Furthermore, by the time Mimi noticed it, the gale had already escalated into a terrifying hurricane. Carrying countless fluorescent lights, it possessed a terrifying hurricane that could destroy a part of the world. The momentum was so fierce that it even surpassed the oppressive feeling brought about by the collapsing sky. Roar! Within the hurricane, a deep and majestic lion's roar resounded through the sky, shaking the sky that was constantly collapsing. "Kacha!" A bolt of lightning struck down from the sky, but it wasn't aimed at the hurricane. Instead, it was aimed at the projection of Winged God. Of course, although the lightning was unexpected, it didn't pose much of a threat to the Winged God's projection. But even so, the Winged God's projection, which was locked in a stalemate with the Void Walker, had a slight pause in its materialization. Mimi saw a sliver of opportunity in this moment of stagnation. A chance. Tactical music equipment, fully activated. Mimi didn't hesitate to activate the strongest equipment on the Void Walker, and when the tactical music equipment was activated, her gaze first fell on the hurricane, and then fell on the Winged God's projection. Ray Minkai, use your strength to your heart's content. And now you're watching over there, right? The moment the LED light that represented the completion and successful activation of the tactical music equipment lit up, Mimi unleashed all her strength, and her singing voice suddenly resounded through the sky. In the high-spirited and hot-blooded song, the hurricane that swept across the world actually soared by 3 points, faintly suppressing the momentum caused by the descent of the Winged God's projection. Sister Mimi, long time no see. Your singing really makes me miss it. It's still so exciting. In the hurricane that swept across the sky, Mimi clearly saw that the Winged God's projection, which had stagnated, actually stretched out her right hand toward the Void Walker and made a V gesture. In an instant, Mimi seemed to have returned to the scene when she took Anai away from her hometown. Anai, it's really you. Mimi's singing didn't stop, but she was strangely able to talk to the existence named Anai, hidden behind the Winged God's projection. Yes, I'm back, Sister Mimi. The familiar voice, the familiar emotional changes, and the Winged God's projection that completed the materialization in an instant. Why did you come back? At that time, I clearly took the initiative to complete my self-sacrifice as a savior and save the world. In the hurricane, the stagnant materialization of the Winged God's projection broke through Mimi's obstruction in an instant and completely completed the materialization in this world, this time and space, and stood in the air with the Void Walker. Roar! The hurricane suddenly soared, isolating the Void Walker and the Winged God's vision. This was a fluctuation of power between illusion and reality. This was the last means of self-salvation of the sea's world and the deepest consciousness of human beings. Everything, all of it. They were all entrusted to Lei Minkai by the girl with shoulder-length hair. The wind howled. The moment the gust of wind, which was like the sharpest wind in the world and could cut through iron and gold, wrapped around the Winged God, a layer of faint light quietly appeared on the Winged God's body, isolating it from the gust. At the same time, inside the Winged God's body, the white figure who thanked Lux sat upright and looked up at the hurricane that was covering the world in silence. In the center of the hurricane that covered the world, the red light that looked like flames wrapped around the fiery demon sword and guided the red lotus long-fanged lion toward the fiery demon sword. Knight and lion, perhaps you can free this world from the fate of being devoured. Now, everything is in your hands. The short-haired girl's figure gradually turned illusory. In the end, she turned into a wisp of light and completely fused with the Geas wings of light on Rei Minkai's forehead. Several figures descended from the void, shuttling through the hurricane and separating from the turbulent sea. The moment they appeared, the fiery red light that lingered on the fiery demon sword suddenly soared, igniting the hurricane that covered the world. In the hurricane with billowing flames, the moment the fiery red light enveloped the three figures, Rei Minkai suddenly realized that he was standing in a pitch-black space, where he had lost his sense of direction and the flow of time. Before Rei Minkai could react, there was a slight fluctuation in this pitch-black space. The moment the spot of light lit up, countless colorful ribbons of light took this as an opportunity to erupt. They swept past Lei Minkai and flew towards the deep darkness behind him, where the unknown was hidden. From the colorful ribbons of light, Rei Minkai saw the birth of the world and the development of the world. He saw the moment when the little boy, who was a prince, faced with the grievous news of his mother's assassination, still stood firmly in front of his father, who was the emperor of the empire, and questioned him. He saw the girl, who was naive but also full of hope, stepped onto the plane and headed toward the fate of certain death. He saw the pitch-black mask that guided the development of the world. He saw the power that was cursed by people, pursued by people, and worshipped as the ultimate truth. Geas. Ray Minkai subconsciously raised his hand to push aside the colorful ribbons of light and stepped into the deep, unknown darkness. Buzz! The moment his foot landed, the colorful ribbons of light dissipated and the deep darkness retreated. Between heaven and earth, only the gray and white space, the steel giant, and the short-haired girl standing in front of the steel giant were left. Is this the god that you call the brave king? The short-haired girl, who was the only color in this world, turned her head and looked at Ray Minkai with a smile. Ray Minkai raised his head, looked at the familiar steel giant, and nodded his head slightly. Yes, his name is Jayagagar. The hurricane dissipated, and under the shattered sky, the steel giant that contained the power to destroy heaven and earth descended. That is the brave King Jayagagar. In the dissipated hurricane, Himimi couldn't help but cry out in surprise when she saw the steel giant that completely revealed its existence under the shattered sky. No, that is not the brave King Jayagagar. In the next second, Himimi discovered the difference between the steel giant that appeared in front of her and the brave king in her memory. Other than the lion head that was similar in shape but different in color, the rest of the body was not the image of the brave king that Himimi learned from her father. However, in Himimi's eyes, the steel giant that looked like the brave king raised its hand and used a move called Flying Drill Jet Punch. The steel fist that was shot out at high speed swept through the void and slammed into the light force field that enveloped Winged God. Himimi's eyelids twitched a few times. She was so surprised that she almost forgot her lines and made a mistake in her singing. Is really the brave king? Where did Lei Minkai get his hands on such a powerful machine? Even if she was surprised, even if she was confused, the origin of the brave King Jayagagar was no longer important. What was important was that she had the confidence to stop Winged God and Anai's actions. This is really surprising. Sister Mimi. In Winged God's cockpit, the girl in white named Anai seemed to be sighing and rejoicing. She wasn't scared by the sudden appearance of the brave king. Instead, in the depths of her eyes, there was a glimmer of light called anticipation. Boom! The light condensed, and a force field that was far stronger than the flying drill jet punch was formed, blocking the former forcefully. Under the guidance of the automatic program, the blocked right fist naturally wouldn't fall into the turbulent ocean below. Looking at Winged God, who had been a passive position so far except for attacking the Eternal Ones, Ray Minkai didn't dare to be careless. Even now, with the help of C's power of the world, he summoned the brave king again. Ray Minkai, you don't have to worry about your spirit. You just need to focus on dealing with Winged God. The high-spirited singing suddenly changed and turned into a rather sacred hymn. Chapter 809. The sky was clear for thousands of miles, and a refreshing breeze was blowing in the afternoon. This was supposed to be a relaxing interlude in the busy work. However, it was such a small interlude that became the moment of burning the earth and burning life. Above the cloudless sky, a pure white giant like a god was singing loudly. It seemed to be singing the praises of tranquility, peace, and the beauty of the world. However, under this pure and holy song, a terrifying crack tore through the sky in an instant, and a terrifying giant beast descended from the sky. Warning! 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 An unknown force field has been discovered worldwide. At the same time, in the vicinity of the unknown force field, an unknown body has also been discovered, or a monster. In the warship lurking at the bottom of the sea, an ear-piercing alarm sounded. But this alarm did not make the warship lurking at the bottom of the sea move immediately. Instead, it shocked the humans on the entire warship. The pure white giant like a god descending. The demon that was like an abyss descending, wreaking havoc on the human world. The earth engulfed by flames. The people who fled in panic under the claws of the demon. All these scenes were just like, is the end of the world coming? Richard Madukas, who had taken over the position of the captain of the Sons of Dan Slave from the former Captain Teresa, who was also treated as a daughter, subconsciously pinched the brim of his hat and muttered silently, "Captain, please give your orders." Countless intelligence reports of unknown attacks in various places constantly poured into the warship lurking at the bottom of the sea from Mithril's global intelligence network. This made the members of the Sons of Dan Slave shocked, and at the same time, they also felt a chill. Don't panic. Pass down the order. Level 1 combat state. The Sons of Dan Slave immediately go to the nearest city to assist the citizens in retreating. As for the rest, leave it to the Mithril troops stationed there. Yes, although the battle order had been issued, Richard Madukas' emotions did not ease at all. God, if this is really the end of the world, then where will you be? After seeing such a terrible scene, what will you do? Captain, thunder and lightning traversed the sky, eliminating all the creatures that were regarded as heretics. The rumbling thunderbolts that struck the earth were actually cracks that tore apart the world. Inside the rift, exotic beasts were charging out from the void behind the rift and attacking everything around them in a frenzy. Trees, birds and beasts, a huge rock, in the mountains, buildings evacuate, as well as humans. Anything that obstructed the vision of the exotic beasts or their way forward, regardless of whether it was dead or alive, would become the target of the exotic beasts. Monster, save me. That cruel and bloody action sent chills down the spines of all the humans who witnessed it. Amidst the screams, the people who were terrified of the exotic beasts pushed and shoved the others who were trying to stop them from escaping, doing their best to push away the strangers who were trying to stop them. Chaos, panic, in front of the approaching exotic beast. He seemed so helpless and pitiful. On the main road of the city, 3 heretics produced by Aub, brought in by Scanagar as national defense airframes, quickly took up an advantageous position and worked together to stop the exotic beasts that were attacking the city. Under the roar of the Vulcan cannon, the beasts, which were less than 10 meters tall, fell into a pool of blood. Safe. The attack stopped. Report the situation. The heretic in the first attacking position raised his right hand and signaled for his teammates to cease fire. Yes, the exotic beasts attacking the city have been temporarily stopped by us. But according to the observation and information we have obtained so far, it might not end so easily. Also, Captain Flying Bird, we should evacuate the people immediately. Otherwise, the deputy sent over information about the enemy and the surroundings and gave a suggestion. However, the terrifyingly young captain did not care about the situation of the people around her. She had more important targets. Leave the people to the follow-up troops to deal with. Right now, we have a more important mission. Everyone, follow me. Miss Kriya and Lord Sienna are still in the suburbs. We have to find them as soon as possible and bring them back. Krillius Sass Klein, Sienna SAS Klein. Ever since this father and daughter pair stepped onto the stage of Scanagar, they have become the most popular figures among the people. This did not mean that the father and daughter pair had contributed greatly to the development of Scanagar, but because the father and daughter pair had worked tirelessly and personally to improve the living conditions of the people and to improve the situation between the people and the refugees. Such actions that were not for fame or profit earned the respect of the majority of the people. Before this sudden attack, the father and daughter pair had been carrying out food aid to a refugee camp in the suburbs according to their schedule. I definitely won't let anything happen to you. Miss Kriya, Lord Sienna, 3 heretics painted in the frosty white of the Scanagar Defense Force flew over the heads of the panicking crowd, flying towards the refugee camp in the suburbs. Above the land attacked by the exotic beasts, the empty space was the same. Captain, D Forward Observation Station has sent an emergency distress signal. Send out a distress signal to all nearby warships. After the battle with the Akin-Due, Zaf's new warship, Minerva, which had just begun its first voyage, suddenly received a distress signal from D Forward Observation Station that was constantly monitoring the situation of the X-1 crack. As the new captain, Talia Caracas pondered for a moment, then decisively gave the order to attack. Prepare for Level 2 combat. Miling, forward D's distress signal back to the country. Although this is sudden, I believe headquarters will agree to Minerva's change of direction and rescue D. Yes. Understood. Deal with it immediately. Miling Hawk, who was Minerva's CIC, responded and quickly sent out Captain Talia's order. The moment the Level 2 combat alarm sounded, the black-haired youth lying on the bed immediately jumped up. Calm down. Really, it's only Level 2 combat alarm. We just need to appear in the waiting room in time. As the black-haired youth's roommate, the blonde youth slowly put down the book in his hand and said unhurriedly, Ray, what are you talking about? Have you forgotten how many times Instructor Amify gave us special training because we were late to class back in the military academy? The black-haired youth quickly put on his uniform and walked out of the room. Right now, we're on the Minerva, not in the academy. And Drill Master Amify isn't on this ship either, is she? Really calm down. Did you forget Instructor Amify's evaluation of you? In the face of his roommate's rebuttal, the blonde youth gently smiled and followed. Impulsive, reckless, hot-headed, things will only get worse. The black-haired youth, real flying bird, recalled the evaluation of himself by one of the heroes born from the battle with Akin-Due. He couldn't help but shrug his shoulders. Let's go. Now we have to save people. I hope you won't be too reckless. Ray, I understand. This was the scene that happened in many worlds during the birth of a new world. And this scene was seen by everyone in the Destiny Council. Look, fellow counselors. The dream we pursued, the ideal has finally come true. Now, the worlds we set foot in are beginning to merge according to our wishes. Soon, very soon, we will see the birth of the new world we pursue. The speaker of the Destiny Council was rarely excited, waving his arms and shouting the ultimate dream that the counselors pursued. Create the world, transform the world, and then become a new god? No, it's definitely not that simple. Amidst the increasingly loud cheers of the Destiny counselors, the young man who hid his face behind the black mask silently clenched his right hand. He was so eye-catching that the counselors, whose emotions had been stirred up by the speaker of the Destiny Council, had to cast some of their gazes on him. The reason, perhaps he was the only one who could still stand unscathed among the 7 sacrificial seats. It seems that our Mr. K's ability is beyond our imagination. But this is a good thing. After all, the new world will make us busier and busier. It's a great thing to have such an outstanding person like Mr. K as one of us. Lou Lucio did not waver, nor did he open his mouth to defend himself, because the sacrifice just now did exist. That moment of collapse, that moment of fainting was also real. As for why he did not faint completely like Leonard and 9 Dragons, Lou Lucio knew nothing about this. Fortunately, other than the speaker of the Destiny Council defending Lou Lucio's luck, there was another scene. An unexpected scene that appeared in many worlds engulfed by war, monsters, and exotic beasts. The pure white giant that sang the sacred melody was still standing in the void. But there were no exotic beasts or monsters around it. There were only the giant that stood proudly in front of it, with a mighty and majestic body that seemed to contain an endless steel body. And further behind, the body that unfolded the strange armor. The members of the Destiny Council might not know about the steel giant, but the body that unfolded 2 strange armor that seemed to be external speakers and was surrounded by many miniature drones made the members of the Destiny Council cry out in surprise. The daughter of the pioneer, Mimi. Suddenly, the entire venue was in an uproar. What kind of people were the pioneers? As long as one was a member of the Destiny Council, one would definitely have dealt with them. Of course, there were only two outcomes for those who interacted with the foreigners. One was to escape by luck. The other was to welcome death. Today, the members of the Destiny Council who were able to sit here and watch the birth of a new world were all lucky people. Speaker. Among the members, there were already people who could not sit still. Calm down. This is not something we can handle. Because this is his choice. The Speaker of the Destiny Council raised his hand again, indicating for the members to calm down. His gaze moved down and looked at the crystal coffin that had quietly opened at some point. The person in the coffin still showed no signs of waking up. I'm afraid that her consciousness is still there. Chapter 8:10. An endless stream of people, peddlers who were constantly hawking their wares. A lively scene was constructed in this ancient city, causing the foreign girl to exclaim in admiration. At first, the foreign girl who came to this ancient city in a way that ordinary people could not understand seemed so out of place. However, under the gaze of the patrolling guards, this foreign girl who came from a foreign land smoothly used the local language to bargain with the surrounding peddlers in the blink of an eye. She even bought the things she wanted at a very low price amidst the miserable screams of the peddlers. That skillful bargaining technique, that fluent language, in the end, made the surrounding guards feel that this was just a small episode that made a fuss. Just like this, the foreign girl casually and aimlessly walked in this ancient city, passing through the streets and walking in every corner of the city. When she saw this city that was different from the world that the girl knew, the girl saw a person at the end of a street that was rarely visited, but it was unusually clean and quiet. Unknown white flowers bloomed on both sides of the street. As the flowers swayed in the wind, small figures walked leisurely on both sides of the street. Sometimes they would stop to size up the foreign girl, an uninvited guest. Sometimes they would turn around and walk a few steps quickly to catch up with their companions and play with them. Such a peaceful and harmonious scene surprised the foreign girl who was used to the bustle of this ancient city. She was also very interested in these small animals that were playing and gathering in the depths of the street. Thus, the foreign girl who was used to the bustle of the city and wanted to find a place to rest for a while met another girl under the lead of these small animals that were shuttling through the streets. At that time, the white-clothed girl who had lost her ability to move and her light, who should have been able to see all the beautiful things in the world, smiled gently in the direction of the foreign girl while being surrounded by many small animals in the midst of the blooming flowers. "Hello, I'm Annie Ifar." Yes, that was the first meeting between the two girls. Even after experiencing the separation of life and death, the memory that was engraved in the depths of her heart did not disappear until that moment when it appeared again. Gathering seized power of the world under Lei Minkai's call, and under the brave king's attack that crossed the void, the pure white giant known as the winged god didn't move at all. It only silently maintained its singing posture. However, this was not because he was suppressed by the brave king's attack, but because he did not want to attack the brave king. He did not even want to attack Himimi, who was standing behind the brave king and using her singing to contend against him. Light and shadow swayed. Above Ishan's head, an illusory white figure quietly appeared. It was a young girl sitting in a wheelchair with her eyes closed. She had a tranquil expression and a delicate face that was undisturbed by the outside world. Enna. The girl's appearance caused Himimi's singing to falter slightly. It also caused the Braveheart King's attack to pause slightly. It's her. At this moment, both Himimi and Lei Minkai were surprised by the girl's appearance. "Knight, thank you very much." The girl faced the brave king and bowed slightly to express her gratitude. Lei Minkai frowned and immediately realized that this girl was indeed the person in the coffin that he saw in that strange space. That was just an accident. The brave king clenched his fists slightly. Lei Minkai suddenly felt that he was not worthy of this gratitude. The girl smiled slightly and did not mind Lei Minkai's coldness. At this moment, the melody that Himimi was singing suddenly changed, becoming extremely passionate and hot-blooded. "Inspector Lei Minkai, there's not much time left. If this drags on, this world will be finished. Rei Minkai's coldness did not shake the girl's tranquility. Instead, Mimi's outburst caused the girl's expression to change. Sister Mimi, the girl's face faced the Void Walker, but before she could say a word, she was covered by the Brave King's figure. Boom! In high-speed spinning flames, the Brave King's flying drill jet punch once again collided with the unknown force field that firmly protected Winged God. But this time, a strange sound exploded the moment the fist collided with the unknown force. Ka! Boom! The moment a sharp and crisp sound was heard, the force field was broken. The moment the sharp and terrifying wind blew, the Brave King's flying drill jet punch was about to hit Winged God's head. Buzz! At the critical moment, Winged God's eyes moved. The moment her gaze fell on the drill jet punch, a resonance attack that could crush everything in the world burst out from her mouth and directly hit the drill jet punch that was coming at her. Light erupted at that moment. The sound waves spread out with a loud bang. In just an instant, the flying drill jet punch's attack suffered setback and was directly sent flying by the resonance attack. Among the scattered fragments, it tumbled through the air and finally fell into the depths of the turbulent ocean, disappearing without a trace. However, this did not mean that the girl and Winged God had stopped the Brave King's attack. The mission of the flying drill jet punch had already ended. From the beginning, Rei Minkai did not expect the flying drill jet punch to be able to achieve a decisive result. Therefore, when the flying drill jet punch fell into the ocean, the Brave King's right arm flashed with a golden light. It was actually the huge movement when Golden Mag appeared. The golden wrist was holding a huge, square-shaped golden hammer. Under the light that erupted from the golden hammer, the unknown force field that protected Winged God was rapidly repairing itself. In the blink of an eye, this layer of powerful unknown force field would definitely be completely repaired and become an obstacle for the Brave King's attack once again. Rei Minkai would definitely not let this happen again. The Brave King had the power to stop this from happening. Hammer health. As the golden light scattered, the Brave King's golden wrist swung the huge golden hammer down with a loud bang. The hammer smashed onto the unknown force field that had yet to be completely repaired. Boom! It sounded like an explosion, but at the same time, there was an ear-piercing boom that sounded like the ringing of a bell. In the instant of the explosion, countless glass-like fragments appeared around Winged God. The unknown force field was shattered. Among the falling fragments, the power displayed by the golden hammer seemed to have intimidated Winged God and made her unable to move at all. However, facing the golden hammer that was raised again, the girl standing on top of Winged God's head had already regained her calmness. She revealed an innocent smile. Is that so? It seems that I appear at the wrong time. Then, let's meet again in the future. Sister Mimi. Rumble. The sound of wind swept over. The golden hammer fell again with a loud bang, directly enveloping the girl and Winged God. In an instant, Winged God, who had lost the protection of the unknown force field, turned into a fluorescent light that filled the sky and disappeared into the sky with the girl. Looking at the fluorescent light that filled the sky like stars rising in the sky, Rei Minkai felt that it was unreal. It was too easy. Whether it was before or just now, the Winged God's only two appearances had left deep wounds in the world Rei Minkai was in. Especially the first time she appeared, the entire Oceania had almost become the material for the descent of the Winged God. Now, the Winged God, who had retreated so easily under the attack of the Golden Hammer, made Rei Minkai subconsciously think of another possibility. It's over. Rei Minkai. But it's far from over. Voidwalker moved forward and came to the Brave King's side. Is that so? Aren't you worried that this is a trick? Rei Minkai heard Mimi's meaning, but he did not dare to let his guard down. No, she won't lie to me. Although, I didn't answer her just now. Mimi's voice did not fluctuate at all, showing no emotions, as if she was just calmly talking about something unimportant. Before Rei Minkai could voice his doubts, a shocking change suddenly occurred. Rumble, A bolt of lightning that came out of nowhere tore through the sky, tearing a hole in the sky that was supposed to be shattered into pieces. From the rolling thunder, Ray Minkai saw many strange things appearing in the torn holes. There were monsters, there were machines, there were humans. There were also tall buildings flickering with colorful neon lights. There were also towering castles, as well as indescribable existences. Look down! The horizon seems to have changed. A cry of surprise came from Himimi's side. The sky was not the only one that had changed. The turbulent ocean below also changed when the winged god turned into fluorescent light and disappeared. However, compared to the clear sky, it was difficult to detect any changes in the endless ocean in a short period of time. The horizon that should have been in an arc quietly stretched, lifted, and gradually became a straight line. Moreover, when the horizon straightened, the waves that had been constantly hitting the Divine Wood Island also quickly receded, revealing the seabed that had been submerged by the sea for a long time. Countless coral reefs and the marine life that depended on them were abandoned, leaving them to fend for themselves on the rapidly drying seabed. L. Report the current situation, monitor the sea activity, and determine whether a tsunami has occurred. Ray Minkai's reaction was very fast, but he got an unbelievable answer. Report. There is no possibility of a tsunami being detected. It is recommended to check again after connecting to the environmental monitoring system. No need to check. When a huge shadow appeared from the horizon, Vermilion's voice also came from the communication channel. Kai, this world, no, it should be this continent. This ocean has been torn apart by an unknown force. Now, on the map of the Sovereign Throne, only the mainland of the Britannia Empire and the Pacific Ocean still exist. After pausing for a moment, Vivian continued. In addition, according to the real-time monitoring of the Sovereign Throne, there are many unidentified continental plates outside the mainland of the Britannia Empire and Earth. Chapter 811. Earth. This planet where humans were born and gave birth to civilization was not unfamiliar to humans. However, one day, after experiencing an unheard-of, never-before-seen, unimaginable disaster, the humans who were struggling between life and death raised their heads by chance. When they looked at the shattered starry sky, they were shocked to find that there was another Earth in the shattered starry sky above their heads. That was not an illusion. It was not the crazy consciousness that humans had after experiencing a terrible disaster. It was a phenomenon that really existed. Britannia Empire, Imperial Capital Pandoragon, Ray Minkai and Himimi, who rushed back from the Pacific Ocean, did not even have time to catch their breath before they came to the audience to meet with Euphemia, Hinana, and the others. Of course, at this time, the audience was not a good place to discuss the various phenomena that happened at this moment. Because before Ray Minkai and Himimi rushed back, Euphemia had ordered that the audience would be temporarily set up as a temporary rescue location. In other words, the road from the palace gate to the audience would become a temporary rescue location under Euphemia's order. This could be considered a last resort. Even after the battle, the commotion caused by Mariana before her death still made most of the Britannia people fall into a coma and have not been able to wake up for a long time. In the imperial capital of Pandoragon, the people who could wake up after the battle were only 1/3 of the permanent population, not to mention the other cities in the empire. Sorry, this is our fault. Now, maybe we can make up for it. Before Ray Minkai could speak to Euphemia about the current situation, an illusory figure suddenly appeared behind Ray Minkai. It's you. Ray Minkai looked back and found that it was actually a collection of consciousness in the form of a girl with shoulder-length hair. Don't be surprised. Now the world is still in the blurred zone between illusion and reality. My appearance is but an insignificant part of this absurdity. In the face of the girl's explanation, Ray Minkai did not pursue it too much. After all, the situation in front of them now was absurd enough. It was so absurd that even if something else happened, Ray Minkai would probably be able to accept it calmly. You are a collection of consciousness born in the human subconscious. God? Euphemia looked at the girl with shoulder-length hair and nodded slightly. Although the words sounded like a question, in fact, Euphemia had already confirmed the girl's identity. We're not gods. We are just existences that are occasionally born. What Ray Minkai did not expect was that the girl's sigh revealed a sense of powerlessness. This was completely different from when she was hiding behind Mariana. Don't be surprised. This is the result of our actions. We will take responsibility. After saying that, the Gia's symbol appeared on the girl's forehead. Rays of light burst out from the girl's body and rushed out of the audience. With the palace as the center point, they quickly spread to the Empire, Pandora, and the Britannia Empire. That was the brilliance of consciousness. Every time a ray of light passed by him, Ray Minkai could clearly feel the various emotions behind the brilliance. Hot, cold, nostalgia, admiration, all the positive and negative emotions possessed by humans were here. This should also be the origin of the girl's birth. After an unknown amount of time, when the bright brilliance of consciousness gradually faded, the girl's gaze moved from Ray Minkai to Euphemia and finally stopped on Himimi for a moment. This is the first time we meet. Distinguished guest from another world. In theory, it is indeed the first time we meet. I am Himimi. How should I address you? Himimi nodded and glanced at Ray Minkai. After exchanging glances with Euphemia, she added, "Or should I call you by the name of God?" The girl shook her head slightly. "No, we are not gods. Right now, we are just helpless people who have fallen into the water. Just call us Aurora." In addition, more than half of the Britannia Empire's population should be waking up one after another. Please make arrangements as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Then, let's change to another place. After the lack of manpower was alleviated, Euphemia and the others could finally divert some energy to deal with the strange phenomenon above their heads. After changing from the audience to the palace used by Euphemia, Euphemia just sat down on the main seat and exchanged glances with Ray Minkai. "Now, everyone, please exchange the information you have. Everyone, let me go first." The two of them echoed each other and took the initiative in their hands. Although the method was obvious, the others did not think much of it. As the ruler of the empire, Euphemia and Ray Minkai did indeed have the right and obligation. A few days ago, the rebels led by Mariana started a rebellion that had a far-reaching impact on the empire. Although the rebel leader Mariana was executed not long ago, the impact it caused had caused irreparable damage to the empire. Regarding this, the responsibility is on me. As soon as Ray Minkai finished speaking, Aurora immediately took the responsibility. Aurora's straightforwardness caused an uproar among the crowd. Other than Euphemia and Shumna, the two code holders who could enter and leave sea, the others could not believe that the real culprit who led Mariana to lead the remnants of the church to start a rebellion that burned the empire would appear here so openly. Moreover, from the attitude of Euphemia and Ray Minkai, the two did not seem to have the intention to pursue the matter. Your purpose is to ensure that you can survive when the world changes? The petite Hinana immediately pointed out Aurora's purpose. Yes. A distinguished guest from another world. This is the decision we made collectively. From the recent development, this is the most important choice. But what we didn't expect was that the man who once set off a shocking change in the world of sea still had a backup plan and almost erased our existence. Trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it? Also, my name is Hinana. After Hinana smiled, she raised her head slightly as if she was mocking Aurora. According to her, this may be the cause of all the changes, but it is no longer important. What is important is that according to the real-time monitoring of the sovereign, now, this country has been separated from the original world and thrown into an abnormal space under the influence of an unknown force. Hinana glared at Aurora and continued, "That's right. At the same time that this abnormal space appeared, several continental plates of unknown origin that could not be found in the central database of the sovereign also appeared one after another and bordered the continental plate where this country is located. Nana, Since you can detect that the continental plates of unknown origin are bordered by this place, can you detect the situation over there? Mimi asked. This was also the question of Euphemia, Ray Minkai, and the others. Let me answer this question. After all, I'm monitoring all of this from a scene. A stream of light descended from the void, and Vermilion's figure appeared beside Ray Minkai. When those continental plates appeared, I activated all kinds of detection instruments in the Sovereign to detect the continental plates. In the end, I found that no matter how I mobilized the detection instruments in the Sovereign, I couldn't detect the continental plates of unknown origin. Then, the continental plates we saw were illusions? Is it included in these illusions? The blonde princess, Isolum, stepped forward and raised her finger to the window as she spoke. Above the sky, a crimson star was rising. That's Mars. In the night sky, the crimson symbol was the planet called Mars by humans. Mars. However, the sky above the Britannia Empire should have collapsed by now, so how could they see the same stars so clearly? Vermilion and Nana looked at each other, and it was Nana's turn to speak. Let me explain this point. Everyone, what you see is not an illusion. Although the detection instruments on the Sovereign can't detect those unfamiliar continents, there's a new set of space detection instruments that have just been installed on Demonis. And it just happened to detect the culprit that caused the detection instruments of the Sovereign to fail. Nana raised her hand and tapped in the air, and holographic projection screens appeared in front of everyone. Although from the perspective of human senses, this shocking change seems to be coming to an end. But from the data obtained by the detection instruments, this shocking change has only just begun. The proof is the shielding force field that caused most of the detection instruments of the Sovereign to fail. As the signs of unknown and unknown occupied the holographic projection screens one after another, the mystery shrouding those unfamiliar continents was lifted. These force fields are well hidden. Not only do they have a high level of information shielding performance, but they also have the power to block anything that wants to pass through the force field and reach the other end. At the end of the speech, the holographic projection screen in front of everyone also played a video of the exploration satellite launched from the throne, trying to pass through the invisible force field to reach the other side to investigate the situation, but was crushed by the force field on the spot. Such a troublesome force field was rare. Is this not bad news, but it's not bad either? Ray Minkai pondered for a moment and smiled bitterly. Since they could not detect the situation of those unfamiliar continents, it might also mean that the civilizations on those unfamiliar continents might also encounter the same problem. It's indeed possible. Vivian took over the topic and continued. That's right. However, compared to the troublesome, unfamiliar continents, the starry sky above our heads seems to have begun to change. The most obvious thing was pointed out by Princess Isilaram just now. The planet called Mars is not only getting brighter and brighter, but it may even further shorten the distance between it and Earth. What? Isilaram was taken aback and exclaimed subconsciously, "You mean Mars is moving closer to us? How is this possible? This will cause a gravitational disaster." No. Logically speaking, this could indeed cause a disaster. However, in this strange space, the laws of physics that we know have probably changed. Therefore, no matter how strange the phenomenon is, it is still possible for it to happen. Nana sighed and threw out another topic. The current situation is like this for the time being. We still need to monitor the detailed data. But before that, I'm afraid we have to deal with some things. Sister Vilvian, don't you think so? When Vermilion heard this, she immediately nodded with a dignified expression. Kai, Your Majesty Euphemia, just now, the Throne of Command detected 2 distress signals. One is a distress signal from near the Britannia Empire, hundreds of nautical miles east of the Pacific Ocean. The other is a distress signal from above the starry sky, the coordinates near the L1 point. Distress signal? Ray Minkai and Euphemia looked at each other and nodded in unison. Release it. Then, play the first distress signal. A golden light flashed in Vilvian's eyes, and a distress audio with some noise, but it made Teresa, who had been listening silently, unable to sit still. Distress. Distress. This is the son of Dan New, the assault landing submarine belonging to the Mithril Western Pacific Squadron. I'm Captain Richard Mardukas. The ship is under attack by an unknown enemy. The situation is urgent. The situation is urgent. Please come to support immediately. Please support the ship immediately. Lieutenant Colonel Mardukas? How can it be? He didn't come here with me? Teresa was stunned, as if she couldn't accept the authenticity of the distress signal. But the next second, an image captured by an orbiting reconnaissance satellite forced Teresa to accept this fact. On the dry seabed, the son of Dan New, the assault landing submarine designed and built by Teresa herself, was lying there with bruises all over its body. And around it, strange and ferocious beasts were crazily rushing toward the son of Dan New. Captain Teresa, I'll leave Avalon to you. Let's go. Xia Yufeng, Xia Yulan, each of you lead a team of night guards to follow Teresa to rescue the son of Dan New. The swift and decisive Euphemia didn't wait for Teresa to speak and decisively gave the order. Not only did she give Avalon to Teresa, but she also gave Xia Yufeng and Xia Yulan, who had always been her shadow guards, to Teresa. Teresa's eyes flashed, and she bit her lips slightly. No matter how many words she had in her heart, she could only turn them into a firm knight salute. Yes, Your Majesty. Seeing the twins, who had been invisible ever since they became Euphemia's shadow guards, leave with Teresa, Ray Minkai once again turned his gaze to Velvet, and the latter also released the second distress signal tacitly. This time, it was Ray Minkai and Lakis' turn to be surprised. This is the assault landing ship Minerva, which belongs to Zaft. This ship was ambushed when it was ordered to protect the D Frontier Research Station. The allies who were traveling with this ship have been wiped out, and this ship is also in a very dangerous situation. All allies who hear this distress signal, please come and support this ship immediately. This ship is keeping the truth about the X-1 crack safe. I'm the current captain of Minerva, Talia Karates. I swear on my honor as a soldier. This is the key to the survival of mankind. All allies who hear this distress signal must come and support this ship. Chapter 8:12. The seemingly illusory but incomparably scorching sun was hanging high in the sky, wantonly sprinkling its own heat on the salt-white sand, burning all the creatures that existed here. This was the 6th day since the Pacific Ocean's water level plummeted due to the super disaster caused by the fusion of the worlds. At the moment when the water level plummeted, the sons of Dan's slaves, who relied on their excellent diving performance to bring all the refugees they could find away from the disaster area and prepare to go to the next safe zone of Mithril, were unable to escape from this instantaneous disaster. In the blink of an eye, the chaotic waves formed by the plummeting water level almost caught the sons of Dan's slaves off guard and directly hit the seabed, resulting in the terrible fate of the ship being destroyed and the people on board dying. Fortunately, with the efforts of Richard Mardukas and a group of technicians, the sons of Dan's slaves were lucky enough to escape from this perilous situation. However, although they avoided certain death, they couldn't avoid the damage that the sons of Dan's slaves suffered in this sudden disaster. More than half of the power unit was paralyzed, and the power supply capacity was reduced. As a result, the combat performance of the sons of Dan's slaves was reduced, and, at the same time, it was unable to protect the living environment of the people on board. This was nothing to Richard Mardukas and all the members of the Sons of Dan's slaves. But the most terrible thing was that there were still many refugees on board the Sons of Dan's slaves. Although these refugees could be temporarily appeased, once the situation of the Sons of Dan's slaves was discovered by these refugees, it would be difficult for any conflict to break out. At that time, it's really full of danger. Richard took off his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and squinted slightly as he looked at the pale white in the distance. Perhaps, many years ago, as a rookie in the Navy, he had all kinds of yearnings and guesses about this pale white continent hidden deep under the blue ocean. But he never thought that he would see this pale white continent with his own eyes in such an unexpected way. After Richard Mardukas put on his glasses again, he shifted his gaze away from the pale white and azure horizon and slowly shifted his gaze to the pale white hill that was only about 100 meters away from the son of Dan's slave. There was a small amount of seawater that was intercepted by the former rift valley on the seabed. In the middle of this pale white, azure, and strange black valley, there were a few fish that had been dead for many days lying there quietly. Richard remembered that on the first day the son of the Dan slave was stranded, Richard, who had yet to grasp the surrounding situation, discovered that there were many sea creatures around the son of the Dan slave that had died in the disaster. He decisively ordered a portion of the refugees to collect the edible sea creatures as reserves. Now, it seemed that this decision was correct. Despite the complaints of the refugees, the sons of Dan's slaves didn't use much of their food reserves because they had the timely collection and preservation of marine life as food. However, this was only a temporary measure. Captain, the search team has already returned. At this time, the call of the bridge came from the headset. At the same time, Richard also saw 3 distinct steel silhouettes rising and falling on the white land. It was Melissa Mao, Cruz Wilba, and Sosuke Sagamihara's team. From the looks of it, this is our fate, right? Captain, there were 3 search teams sent out by the son of the Dan slave. But now, the team that searched the furthest and covered the largest area came back earlier than the other 2 teams. Perhaps this already symbolized some results. Perhaps Richard's premonition was right. When Mao, Wilba, and Sosuke Sahara's team had just returned to the son of the Dan slave, a warning suddenly sounded. Captain, the second team seems to have been attacked, but we have lost contact with them. The moment the warning sounded, Richard had already turned around and ran back to the ship, rushing toward the bridge. His speed was so fast that it startled the surrounding people. It really came. This disaster probably didn't happen suddenly. Richard didn't know the inside story of the fusion of the worlds, but based on the intuition of a soldier, Richard still noticed something. And these things became incomparably real with the loss of contact of the other search team. Captain, we lost contact with the second team, but before that, they sent back the image of the attacker. Transfer it to the main screen. Richard ordered as he pressed down on his military cap that was a little loose from running. The next second, the bridge was in an uproar. On the main screen, there was an image of the alien that looked like a human tumor, but was large enough to match the size of an AS. It was waving its tentacles and besieging the main AS used by Mithril, M9. This video seemed to have some sound, but it seemed to have encountered interference and couldn't be clearly transmitted back to the son of the Dan slave. But this already proved the situation of the second team and the crisis that the son of the Dan slave was about to face. Monsters? Monsters from that time? Richard secretly gritted his teeth, but his expression was still very calm. Pass down the order. Level 1 Battle Preparation. All combatants immediately enter the battle position. In addition, inform Melissa Mao and the others that they can't take a good rest now. Let them prepare for a defensive battle immediately. Yes. Looking at his subordinates who quickly began to fight, Richard couldn't help but have a question in his mind. What happened to this world? Monsters? Doomsday? Unfortunately, no one could tell Richard Madukas the answer to this question. A few minutes later, Mao, Cruz, and Sosuke Xiangliang, who hadn't had time to return to Naku to take a sip of water, could only stay in the shadow of the son of the Dan slave and catch their breath. Sister Mao, I heard that the first and second teams are already gone. So, the son of the Dan slave is only left with our M9 team? Cruz threw the empty water bottle aside and said with a sigh, although those guys are usually a bit annoying, it's really not good that they ended up like this. When the order to prepare for battle was issued, they had already received a secret communication from a bridge. Seeing the familiar M9 being attacked by the disgusting and unfamiliar monsters, let alone Cruz, Mao, and even Sosuke Xiangliang, who was usually missing a line, couldn't help but sweat. Compared to the arms dealers and armed organizations they faced in the past, This was a completely unfamiliar, ferocious, and extraordinarily terrifying enemy. Other than the image of the second team's M9 being torn apart by the monsters, they didn't know anything about these monsters that suddenly appeared. Do you guys think this is the culprit that caused this disaster? Melissa Mao pulled the trigger on her arm guard, took a deep breath, and threw out this question. Insufficient information, unable to answer. This was Sosuke Xiangliang's answer. Is that so? Sosuke, could it be that you haven't been able to take down the cute little guy because of the lack of information? Sosuke Xiangliang, who was concentrating on adjusting his M9, was speechless. Okay, the joke before the battle ends here. The enemy is here. While Melissa Mao's voice became deep, the pale, white horizon in the distance also stirred up a cloud of dust. The monsters were here. Da-da-da-da. Machine guns were roaring. Bullets were whistling. Bursts of bloody mist exploded. The monsters that were torn apart fell one by one, but they were immediately trampled into blood by the monsters behind them. The scene of blood and flesh splattering everywhere made the mithril soldiers, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, turn pale and almost vomit. Especially when the hot wind mixed with the stench hit them in the face, the soldiers with slightly weaker nerves almost turned around and vomited. Steady, steady, Melissa Mao shouted loudly on the public channel, commanding her comrades on the deck to use firearms and rocket launchers to support the M9 to stop the group of attacking monsters. In the beginning, this tactic was effective. The red and black sand dunes under the feet of the monsters were the result of this tactic. But as time passed, this defensive battle lasted from noon to evening, until the sun slowly set and was about to be shrouded in darkness. The Sons of Dan Nu's ammunition reserves had been depleted by 3/4. During this period, when the battle was at its most intense, a few monsters broke through the defense line of the 3M9 and rushed onto the deck of the Sons of Dan Nu. While killing several mithril soldiers, they also broke through the shield door that was immediately put down. Fortunately, the other surviving soldiers risked their lives to carry the rocket launchers and rushed to a very close distance to give these monsters a fierce blow. Only then did they stop these monsters from rushing into the ship of the Sons of Dan Nu. After this chaos ended, although the lost manpower was replenished in time, the number of monsters increased at the same time, and they were even more terrifying. From a beginning of a one-sided attack to the setting sun, the monsters appeared from all directions and enveloped the pale white land. In an instant, the humans on the Sons of Dan Nu fell into despair. Now, quick, fire all the missiles of the Sons of Dan Nu. Quick! Among the ammunition consumed by the Sons of Dan Nu, there was no quota for the various types of missiles that they were equipped with. As the trump card of the Sons of Dan Nu, Richard Mardukas had left it until the end. Even just now, when the defense line formed by the 3M9 and many mithril soldiers almost collapsed, he did not use this trump card. Now it was time to use this trump card. Boom! Boom! In an instant, when countless pillars of smoke rose into the sky, it was the moment when the boundless sea of fire scattered over the monsters' heads. The flames engulfed everything. The flesh and blood scattered all over the sky became the scene that the Sons of Dan Nu faced at this moment. From this moment on, the rumbling sounds of the explosion continuously impacted the senses of the surviving mithril soldiers, as well as the senses of Mao, Cruz, and Sosuke Xiangliang. Is it over? Cruz tilted his head slightly, avoiding the sniper scope that was illuminated by the flames of the explosion. He could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Since they had been fighting from noon until now, whether it was the body or the body, they had reached their limits. If the Sons of Dan Nu's ultimate attack could not repel this group of monsters that had suddenly appeared, they were afraid that, attention, everyone, the enemy is here. Mao's breathing became incomparably heavy. This was the sound of extreme exhaustion. That's right, the enemy is attacking again. Even if the Sons of Dan Nu were to fire with all their might, they still could not stop the group of monsters from advancing. Countless bodies that emitted the smell of burnt flesh and blood stepped on the blazing flames and broke through the defense line of the missile blockade, once again rushing in front of the M9 team. Da-da-da-da. The machine gun roared for less than a few seconds before it went mute. Mao gritted his teeth and did not hesitate to control the body to smash the machine gun in his hand at the monsters. At the same time, he also pulled out the single-molecule blade at his waist and cut the monsters that had rushed in front of him while braving the bullets into two. Sosuke. Cruz. Yes, sir. They're here. Leave Sister Mao's back to me. Bang. As the sound of the sniper rifle rang out, the corners of Cruz's mouth curled into a bitter smile. This was because in front of his eyes, the prompt that there was not much ammunition left was so glaring. In the end, I still have to pick up a short sword and fight in close combat. On the other side, relying on their advantage in numbers, the monsters that had once again crept onto the deck of the Sons of Dan Nu's flank pounced on the mithril soldiers like a small mountain. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, gunshots, explosions, the roar of rocket launchers sweeping across the deck became the last line of defense for the mithril soldiers on the deck. However, this line of defense was so fragile. While the 3M9s were entangled by more and more monsters and had no time to care about anything else, the mithril soldiers who relied on their flesh and blood to resist the monsters finally retreated into the ship after paying a painful price of almost being destroyed. They tried to rely on the facilities in the ship to resist. However, the monsters that rushed onto the deck did not encounter the scene of being blocked by the narrow passageway as humans had expected. Instead, they directly used their terrifyingly agile tentacles to violently dismantle the Sons of Dan Nu. In just a few moves, the gate that was trying to fall was blocked by the monsters. Moreover, amidst a series of screams that made one's teeth ache in panic, they forcefully broke through the line of defense, stepping on the bodies of the fallen mithril soldiers as they rushed into the Sons of Dan Nu, reporting. Area A1 and B2 have fallen. Our personnel have retreated to Area D1 and F3. The enemy's attack strength has exceeded our expectations. We are unable to establish an effective defense. Reports of the enemy's attacks kept coming in, but Richard Madukas could not think of any effective way. If you were still here, maybe there would be other ways? The moment this idea emerged, it was rejected by Richard Madukas. No, fortunately, you are not here, Captain. Was he giving up? No. Richard Madukas did not accept the idea of giving up. While raising his hand and turning his beloved military cap to the back of his head, Richard Madukas turned around and took out a pistol from beside the captain's seat. Everyone, continue to stay here and command. Now, I am gathering people to resist the enemy's attack. Captain, don't be impulsive. We still need your command here. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly dissuaded him. Hey, don't worry. I rather cherish my old life. Richard Madukas smiled. At least, before the Sons of Dan Nu completely fell, he would not surrender just like that. At this moment, a message compiled with a special password that had not appeared in the Sons of Dan Nu's communication directory for a long time suddenly appeared on the main screen. Sons of Dan Nu. Sons of Dan Nu. Attention, please. Please immediately transfer the combat units in Area A1. Avalon is about to carry out a regional strike mission. Repeat. Please immediately transfer the combat units in Area A1. Avalon is about to carry out a regional strike mission. The appearance of this voice made Richard Madukas stop in his tracks, and everyone in the bridge was stunned. The voice that Richard Madukas and everyone in the bridge had never forgotten actually appeared at this moment. Moreover, it was accompanied by several dazzling rays of light that descended from the sky. Boom, boom, boom. 3 dazzling rays of light, like the eruption of a star, covered all the light in the world, with the Sons of Dan Nu as the center. 1 was up and 2 were down on this pale white land, like an impossibly accurate triangle. In an instant, the monsters that were besieging the Sons of Dan Nu were crushed to pieces. Even if some of them were lucky enough to avoid the area of the explosion of light, it was difficult for them to escape from the surge of high-pressure air currents set off by the explosion of light. They screamed and struggled to be swallowed by the light. Time might have passed for a long time, or it might have just been a moment, when the pale white land regained its silence again. A floating battleship that had once been a comrade and had fought together with him slowly descended from the sky and hovered over the sons of Dan Nu. That was the floating battleship commanded by Teresa Testarossa, Avalon. Chapter 8:13. Thick and sturdy steel cables with locking hooks fell from the sky. Under the support of many technicians, they were fixed one by one to the fixing rings that were installed in a hurry. On both sides of the thick and sturdy steel cables were the floating battleship Avalon and the paralyzed son of the Dan slave on the pale white ground. This was a choice that Teresa had made. Not long ago, Avalon, who had arrived in time, relied on the precise calculation of the optimal attack coordinate coefficient to send 3 Freya bombs to the precise attack coordinates. While destroying the group of monsters that had besieged the son of Dan's slave, it also prevented the son of Dan's slave from suffering from the aftermath of the Freya explosion to the greatest extent. From the results, Avalon's rescue operation was effective. Although the outer armor of the son of Dan's slave was damaged by the aftermath of the Freya explosion, the crew on the ship did not suffer any other losses except for the sacrifices made when resisting the monster group's attack. Captain, this plan is too ridiculous. Standing in the bridge of Avalon, Richard Madukas, as usual, stood straight in front of Teresa and maintained a standard military posture. He still disagreed with Teresa's decision, and Teresa, as usual, pinched her silver-white braid with her left hand, just like when she commanded the son of Dan's slave to carry out a mission. Colonel Mardukas, the core energy of this floating battleship is enough to complete the mission of bringing the son of Dan's slave out of this white desert. Why do you still object? No, Captain. Richard Mardukas responded subconsciously, but was interrupted by Teresa. My name is Teresa Testarossa, Colonel Mardukas. Now, I'm no longer the captain of the son of Dan's slave. But in our hearts, Richard Mardukas opened his mouth, but finally accepted this reality. I'm sorry for my rudeness. Captain Teresa. Richard Mardukas sighed inwardly. The discussion about whether the son of Dan's slave can leave here ends here. Next, I'm afraid Colonel Mardukas and your team will have to hurry up. Teresa looked at Richard Mardukas' helpless expression and smiled slightly. Then, she looked at the CIC next to her and order the Gemini to lead their subordinates forward and establish a defensive line within Avalon's effective firepower. Prepare to welcome the enemy. Yes. When Richard Mardukas heard this, he subconsciously wanted to say that the son of a Dan slave still had the strength to fight. But he had forgotten that the girl sitting in the captain's seat of Avalon had once been the captain of the son of Dan Nu. Therefore, Teresa was well aware of how much fighting strength the Pill slave's son had left. Colonel Mardukas, the task of the son of Pill slaves was to complete the task as soon as possible. Leave the task of resisting the enemy to us. Teresa urged Richard Mardukas unceremoniously. At this moment, Richard Mardukas had the illusion that Teresa was commanding the sons of Dan Nu. Yes. Captain. Richard Mardukas' instinctive reaction left Teresa speechless, but there was nothing she could do. When she boarded the floating battleship of Avalon and led the Gemini's troops to rescue the son of a Dan slave, Teresa had already expected this scene. A scorching wind swept across the pale white ground, bringing up bursts of sand and dust. Amidst the rolling sand and dust, there were blurry figures that moved extremely quickly. In the blink of an eye, these figures rushed out of the sand and dust swept up by the wind, trampling wantonly on the pale white ground below, and rushed toward the son of a Dan slave who was in the middle of the task of pulling in the distance. This was another group of monsters that had discovered the location of the son of a Dan slave. Da-da-da-da. At this moment, a series of gunshots came from the sky, and scarlet blood mists appeared among the group of figures that rushed toward the son of a Dan slave. Poo-pee-you. Poo-pee-you. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Bodies that rolled down. and in the sand and dust that was swept into the air and immediately dyed red by the splattering blood mist, there were defeated monsters that looked like tumors and had tentacles on their bodies. Yulon, you left. I'll go right. The moment the Lionheart Knight, who was painted in red and purple respectively, led his subordinates and descended from the sky, they immediately separated to the left and right, launching fierce attacks on the left and right flanks of the monster group. The Lionheart Knight, a cutting-edge mech designed and manufactured by the Britannia Empire specifically for the Royal Guard Knight Regiment, had long figured out the most suitable tactic in the face of such a situation where they were outnumbered. The Lionheart Knight, who followed the Gemini in the form of an arrow assault team, raised the 50mm machine guns in their hands and interweaved a dense firepower net, turning the pale, tumor-like monsters that tried to intercept the Gemini into a hornet's nest. And in this dense firepower net, the Lionheart Knight, who was positioned at the back, used the 105mm cannon installed on his shoulder as a means of attack, focusing on the group of monsters that might gather together and pose a fatal threat to the assault team, especially the closest Gemini. The bursts of gunshots, the roars, under the valiant charge of the Lionheart Knight, a dazzling and captivating red trajectory was interwoven on the pale white ground. On the deck of the Son of Dan Nu, a pair of binoculars was observing the captivating red trajectory that constantly attacked the monsters. Wow, System Owl, look at that group of guys, they're so fierce. They can actually suppress that group of monsters. The person who held the binoculars and observed the Lionheart Knight troops, led by the Gemini, attacking the pale white monsters was Cruzo Wilba, and standing beside him was Melissa Mao and Sosuke Sagara. Let me see. Although Melissa Mao did not have binoculars, her intuition was sharp and she felt something. It was an ability that she had fully mastered not long ago. It was a power that could only be activated by boarding a mech equipped with a lambda drive system. Lambda drive. The moment Melissa Mao picked up the binoculars, Sosuke Sagara also noticed the secret of the mech driven by the Gemini at the front. Yes, I didn't expect that after the night went back, he used a lambda drive system on his own people. Melissa Mao threw the binoculars back to the fawning Cruzo Wilba, turned around, and leaned against the railing that was distorted beyond recognition in the previous battle, and looked at the busy construction workers. But why do the movements of those two mechs look a little familiar? They seem to be people we've dealt with before. It had to be said that Melissa Mao's intuition was very accurate. The Gemini, who was using the power of the lambda drive system and fearlessly charging to the forefront, was indeed an old acquaintance of theirs. But at this time, the Gemini no longer cared about the existence of the Son of Dan Nu. In their eyes, there was only the enemy. AI, collect the enemy's characteristics, voice shape, movement pattern, and upload it to the Avalon Intelligence Center. While Xia Yufeng was charging in the middle of the monsters, she calmly gave orders to the AI system installed on the mech. Yes, start collecting the required information immediately. The purple-painted Lionheart Knight waved the blade in its hand and chopped the pale monsters in front of it into several pieces. At the same time, it flew up and kicked the monster that pounced on the purple Lionheart Knight while the blood splattered. This was an explosive reactive armor that was specially installed on the purple Lionheart Knight's feet, according to Xia Yufeng's driving style. Not only could it withstand the enemy's live ammunition attack, but could also be detonated by Xia Yufeng under special circumstances, causing unexpected damage to the enemy. Yufeng, be careful. Xia Yulan's warning had just sounded when a layer of glimmer suddenly covered the purple Lionheart Knight, blocking the huge monster that suddenly rushed out from the group of pale monsters and brought a scarlet blood mist with it. Boom! The moment the terrifying impact collided with the glimmer barrier condensed by the lambda drive system, the shock wave that erupted instantly scattered the pale monsters around the purple Lionheart Knight. The monsters that were closer were even torn apart by this terrifying shock wave and fell into a pool of blood, trampled into meat paste by the huge monster that rushed out from among them. Buzz, 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 buzz. In the buzzing sound of the glimmer barrier, Xia Yufeng noticed the appearance of the monster that suddenly rushed out. It was huge and sharp, with a gorgeous triangular head like a corolla. It possessed an unparalleled strength that could easily crush an ordinary mech into pieces. These characteristics all pointed to a certain enemy race that Xia Yufeng only saw in the top secret information authorized by Ray Mingkai. Buzz. Boom. The moment this thought rose in Xia Yufeng's mind, the Lambda Drive system's power fully erupted. The terrifying power that suddenly erupted actually made the triangular-headed monster retreat again and again. In the blink of an eye, it was defeated. Its limbs went soft, and it fell to the ground, shrouded in the death impact that followed. Crack! The triangular head that bore the brunt of the impact cracked open. Then the flesh and blood body that contained the powerful impact tore apart. In the blood mist that gushed out, it was torn apart by the death impact of the Lambda Drive system. Like a chef tearing a chicken apart with his hands, he stripped the giant beast into a huge and terrifying skeleton. Target life response disappeared. While the AI confirmed the death of the giant monster, it also reported the information obtained from Avalon's intelligence center. Information confirmed. The giant monster that appeared just now was 91. 32% similar to the beta recorded in the intelligence data. After confirming with Commander Teresa, Avalon subordinates will temporarily treat the monsters active on this white land as beta. Sure enough, it's beta. Xia Yufeng took a deep breath. Next, it was the highlight. Sure enough, it's beta. On the white land, even further away in the higher void, the void was filled with a strange light. Ray Mingkai stood in the command center of the Throne of Command, frowning slightly as he looked at a picture taken by the optical camera of the Throne of Command. In the picture, in addition to the cosmic battleship that was struggling to escape, there were monsters that were chasing after it. The former aside, Ray Mingkai was surprised by the appearance of the latter. Yes, that was the enemy that Ray Mingkai encountered when he first went to Star City. They were the cosmic beta infected by the abyss. And what they were chasing was Minerva, Zaf's newest battleship. Chapter 814. Under the cold light, it was a busy scene in full swing. People wearing uniforms representing the Wiser Empire shuttled through Naku, delivering documents and materials to where they should be, adding a contribution to this busy scene. And in this busy Naku, a large development team was busy around a pure white steel giant decorated with golden carvings. It was a brand new body redesigned and manufactured with the original Lancelot as the basic blueprint, Lancelot King's Sword. This was the first person in charge of the development of the Empire's cutting-edge technology. After Royd took over Aldnoah, the foundation of the Wiser Empire, he deliberately took out the original design of Lancelot and used it as a blueprint to establish the first research project for Aldnoah in the Britannia Empire. This project began from the moment Ethel Lamb led the remaining people of the Wiser Empire to integrate into the Britannia Empire. After a period of time that was neither too long nor too short, the project finally bore fruit. However, before the results matured, the rebellious incident of Mariana caused the project progress to lag. But as the saying goes, there are gains and losses. The project's lag did not make this research project fail, but instead, it cleverly ushered in the moment of fruition. In the passage leading to Naku, two figures appeared. Walking in front was a blonde girl in a pure white gauze dress, the current empress of the Wiser Empire, Ethel Lamb Wiser Elysia. And behind her was the loyal female knight, Countess Firmian, who had always followed behind Ethel Lamb Wiser Elysia. Your Majesty, now the King's Sword has completed all the test projects. The Countess raised her gaze, looked at the pure white body that was removing many pipes, and said seriously, "Well, thank you for your hard work. Although in my opinion, this needs to be more rigorous. But time doesn't allow us to waste anymore." Ethel Lamb nodded slightly and gave the affirmation to the Countess and many technical staff behind her. According to the plan, after Lancelot King's Sword completed all the tests, there would be a live-fire test in a simulated combat environment. However, due to Mariana's betrayal and the series of effects of the world's fusion, Lei Mingkai made the decision to rescue Mariana immediately after the Throne of Command discovered a distress signal from the universe, the distress signal from Minerva. Therefore, the first project on the integration of Aldnoah into the Britannia Empire's scientific research system, Lancelot King's Sword, became a part of this rescue. However, although the technical team, led by Countess Firmian, had enough confidence in the masterpiece they created, they still lacked the confidence to immediately put it into actual combat. Your Majesty. Firmian was about to say something else, but he changed his mind. Your Majesty, this may be an opportunity. Opportunity? Ethelem turned around and looked at the Countess. Yes, an opportunity. The Countess clenched her teeth and responded to Ethelam's doubts with an aura of desperation. Yes, an opportunity. The Countess, who followed Ethelam, naturally knew that Ethelam once gave her necklace to Rei Mingkai. Even if it was most likely because the necklace's holographic projection technology could solve the problem for Rei Mingkai. From the subsequent performance, the Countess, who believed that her vision was not too bad, found out that Ethelam did not always give the necklace for a reason. Especially in the few meetings with Lakis, the Countess could find that Ethelam's micro-expression was very different when she saw Lakis wearing the necklace she gave to Rei Mingkai. It was unwillingness and resentment hidden under a friendly and calm appearance. There was also a bit of unexpected but reasonable jealousy. Count Firmian. Just as Firmian was trying to figure out Ethelam's psychological activities through her expression, the young queen Weather suddenly stopped the Countess. Time's up. Count Firmian, you can go down and arrange the next operation. Firmian was taken aback, and then he noticed that Ethelam's gaze seemed to be looking at the other side of Neku. That was the passage leading to the command center of the throne. Night King. Sure enough, the expected figure appeared there. Just in time, seeing Rei Mingkai's figure appear there, Firmian smiled knowingly. After bowing to Ethelam, he turned around and commanded the surrounding technical staff to start preparing for the next operation. Ethelam's eyes flickered slightly. With a light tap of her foot, she flew up with her skirt fluttering in the air. Night King. Rei Mingkai, who also flew to Lancelot's Sword of the King with the convenience of the microgravity environment, looked back and saw a pure white dress and long blonde hair fluttering in the air. The next second, the soft body jumped into Rei Mingkai's arms. Princess Ethelam, please be careful. Rei Mingkai looked at Ethelam, who jumped into his arms unexpectedly and felt a little strange. Originally, Ethelam gave him the impression that she was steady and calm, but now she seems to be taking the initiative. Sorry, Night King. Ethelam smiled softly and pressed her hands on Rei Mingkai's chest. After a little distance, she raised her hand and grabbed Rei Mingkai's right hand. Sword of the King is ready. Please come with me. Night King. Without giving Rei Mingkai any time to refute, Ethelam pulled Rei Mingkai to the cockpit of Lancelot's Sword of the King. At this moment, Rei Mingkai, who looked at the cockpit opened by Ethelam, seemed to realize something was wrong. Ethelam, although Sword of the King is a new body, its Aldnoah reactor should already be in an active state, right? However, Ethelam, who entered the cockpit first, did not speak, but pulled Rei Mingkai into the cockpit. Then, a pretty face was enlarged in front of Rei Mingkai's eyes, until there was a soft touch on his mouth. Rei Mingkai's consciousness stagnated at this moment. The next second, their lips parted. From today onwards, the Aldnoah reactor of Sword of the King will be activated by you. Kai. The fragrance had not dissipated. The touch had not subsided. But the pretty girl had already left the cockpit, leaving Rei Mingkai alone in the cockpit of Lancelot, Sword of the King. Another one. Kai, you are really a sinful knight. When a voice of the White Cat State 0 sounded in Rei Mingkai's ears, Rei Mingkai, who gradually came back to his senses, could only see the knight who was standing on the side of the aisle. Her face was bright red, but she stood there quietly, watching the Sword of the King that was about to attack, and its knight. Many thoughts gradually calmed down, and finally, only the unique authority of the Weiss clan recognized by Aldnoah. Aldnoah, in the name of Ray Minkai, wake up! In the ring-shaped belt mixed with countless gravel, a scarred space battleship was carefully passing by the floating gravel around it. Among them, there were several danger situations. It was almost hit by several pieces of gravel with a diameter of hundreds of meters, or even close to 1,000 meters. Looking at the dense gravel belt in front of him, there was almost no safe passage. The helmsman who was driving this scarred space battleship could be said to be in control of the lives of all the humans on this space battleship. The huge pressure between life and death made the helmsman highly focused, but also pushed him to the edge of danger. Stay calm. Now, we have temporarily escaped the pursuit of those monsters. Don't panic. Drive the battleship calmly. At the moment when the helmsman's mind was about to collapse, a calm voice pulled him back from the edge of the cliff. Yes, Captain. The person who comforted the helmsman was the captain of this space battleship, Minerva Talia Karates. Under her comfort, the nervous helmsman gradually calmed down, and the thrilling journey through the gravel belt also became a little more stable. However, the danger was still not gone. Smiling. Really, where are Rem and Luna Maria? Captain Talia's brows were tightly knitted together, constantly calculating the current crisis of the Minerva and the way to lead the crew of Zaf's newest battleship out of danger. Yes, Rem, Luna Maria, and Luna Maria are following the original plan to cover the Minerva's retreat. So far, they have not encountered the enemy. The haggard Myling tried her best to maintain her voice so that it would not be too soft and make the mistake of not being able to transmit the order. It had been a week since the Minerva participated in the rescue operation of the D Frontier Research Space Station. The stress brought about by the high-intensity battle caused the crew of the Minerva to show varying degrees of symptoms of stress. The most terrifying thing was that, other than Maria and a few high-ranking commanders, most of the posts were carried out by the recruits. Being able to last a week in a high-intensity battle in the face of life and death, where the slightest carelessness could lead to eternal damnation, was probably their limit. Let them stabilize. The Minerva will soon pass through this gravel belt. Yes, what was the origin of the monsters that attacked the DSSD? Talia did not know. The only thing she knew was that in front of the Minerva, the first Joint Patrol Squadron to arrive at the scene was torn to pieces by the monsters. It was because of this that the Minerva had the opportunity to receive the survivors of the DSSD and evacuate from the battlefield immediately. However, as the fastest new warship in the Zaf fleet, the Minerva was unable to completely shake off the monsters' pursuit. Being chased by the monsters all the way, Talia could be said to have experienced the dangers of the legendary Archangel when it first appeared. In front of her, the edge of the gravel belt was already in sight. As long as the Minerva could successfully pass through the gravel belt, it was very likely that they would be able to shake off the monster's pursuit. In an instant, a loud warning sound rang out. It startled Talia so much that she straightened her body and asked loudly, "Report the situation. Have those monsters caught up with us?" The radar has captured an unknown signal in front of the Minerva. The number is 1. Myling's hands quickly swept across the keyboard as she replied with a hoarse voice. Speed so fast. More than 3 times the speed of the Zago warriors. 1 minute no, 30 seconds no. Contact the Minerva immediately. As Myling cried out in alarm, she also displayed the image captured by the Minerva's optical camera on the main screen. Quick, air combat begin. Don't. The instant Talia, whose nerves were already stretched to the extreme, was about to order the air combat, a white streak of light flew past the Minerva and rushed into the depths of the gravel belt. That's an Archangel. Myling stared blankly at the image in front of her. It was the image captured by the Minerva's optical camera the instant the white streak of light flew past the Minerva. Chapter 8:15. Where did the large and small gravel belts of different shapes come from? How did they appear? Real Flying Bird wasn't too sure. Even when she compared the interstellar route map carried by the Minerva, she still couldn't figure out where the gravel belt that suddenly appeared before her eyes came from. However, Real Flying Bird knew that the gravel belt that suddenly appeared was the only enemy that the Minerva could escape from. A chance for them to escape the pursuit of those ferocious and terrifying monsters that brandish their tentacles and could even use their sharp and hard tentacles to break the Earth Alliance's active space warship, the Agamemnon-class mothership, in one hit. Real. Focus. Luna Maria is now in a sniper position. Our mission is to stall for time as much as possible. Just as Real Flying Bird's consciousness was somewhat scattered, the voice of her good friend and comrade, Reza Barrel, sounded in a timely manner. Understood. Real Flying Bird heard this and took a deep breath in an attempt to focus her mind that was a little fatigued from the long battle. On the entire Minerva, the people who faced the most pressure were probably the MS pilots. In the week of pursuit, facing the attacks of numerous and strange monsters of unknown origins, the MS pilots on board the Minerva had greatly declined from their full strength until they accidentally rushed into the gravel belt that suddenly appeared. The MS pilots on board the Minerva were only left with Real Flying Bird, Reza Barrel, and Luna Maria Hawk. The other two Zaga warrior squads had already become scattered wreckage on the Minerva's escape route. Real, Ray, there's a situation on the radar. Distance 1,300. According to the heat pattern comparison, it's very likely to be the monsters that have been chasing after the Minerva. Immediately after, the Zaga warrior equipped with long-range artillery equipment, which was the mech piloted by Luna Maria, transmitted the situation outside the gravel belt. Numbers. The white Zagu Phantom poked its head out from the shadow of a large gravel and looked in the direction where Luna Maria had discovered the anomaly. As Ray's nimble fingers danced on the keyboard, the white Zagu Phantom's electronic eyes that were constantly adjusting its focus finally caught the monsters that were rapidly approaching the gravel belt. It's those monsters. They've really caught up. When he heard the voice of Real Flying Bird, Ray took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Get ready. Before the mechanism is activated, you must be steady." Understood. Understood. According to the painful experience accumulated from the previous bloody battles, the group of monsters would not send out any scouts. They would only throw all their forces into the battle when they discovered the enemy, wiping out the enemy with their absolute advantage in numbers. Although this was the most brainless tactic among all the tactical concepts that Real Flying Bird and Ray had learned in the military academy, it also happened to reflect the horror of this group of monsters who could easily eliminate the Earth's joint fleet. Jun, Lei, you are here. Distance 1,000. As the monsters outside the asteroid belt approached, the atmosphere became more and more tense, especially as the sun gradually emerged from behind the Earth and scattered its dazzling radiance over the asteroid belt. Jun, Rem, and Luna Maria saw enemies filling up the radar screen in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, not only did the radar screen turn blood red, but the enemy's figure also occupied the screen in front of the three of them. They were densely packed, as far as the eye could see. With just a glance, they could already tell that there were no less than 1,000 of them. Calm down. The three of them were fighting against nearly 1,000 enemies. Such a huge disparity made the three of them, who had experienced several bloody battles and witnessed the sacrifice of their teammates all the way to the asteroid belt, couldn't help but tremble. This was the instinctive manifestation of the source creature's fear of death. Ray used his left hand to press down on his trembling right hand and tried to encourage his teammates with a calm tone. Yes, calm down. Real Flying Bird's hands were the same. They couldn't stop trembling. However, in his heart, he wanted to rush up and start a bloody battle with the monsters. Distance 80. Wait, the enemy has made a new move. Luna Maria's voice was trembling, but in the next second, Luna Maria's voice was panicked. Enemy? That? How did the number of monsters? How did it suddenly increase? What? Jun and Lei took a closer look and immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. They saw that the monster with sharp horns waving its tentacles actually released smaller, pale monsters that either waved their tentacles or had ferocious eyes. Like flies that smelled a stench, they swarmed into the asteroid belt where the three of them were hiding. "We've been discovered," Ray suddenly thought so in his heart. In addition, the instinct to turn around and escape followed closely, as well as the determination to sacrifice themselves in order to protect the Minerva. "No, we haven't been discovered. The monsters are gnawing on the rocks," Real Flying Bird shouted, and a trace of surprise appeared on his face. His right hand kept pressing on the control panel, using the body he was piloting. Pulse Gao Da's electronic eyes to record the unexpected actions of the monsters. "What's going on?" At this moment, the three of them, who were nervous, scared, and even had the fire of realization ignited, suddenly felt strange and even a trace of absurdity. They're hungry?" Luna Maria bit her lips and said with some uncertainty, "No, we know too little about them. The only thing we know is that we have to get rid of their pursuit." After being surprised, Ray felt a more dignified pressure. As more and more of the smaller, odd-looking monsters were released, the space where the three-man team was hiding was also shrinking as the monsters gnawed at the gravel belt. "Luna Maria, don't wait for the monsters to completely enter the asteroid belt. As long as enough large monsters enter the asteroid belt, immediately detonate the bomb." After Ray quickly gave the order, he looked at Polscow, hiding behind the asteroid belt on the other side. "Real, get ready. This may be our last battle." Hearing this, Real Flying Bird nodded heavily, but didn't say anything. Even if Real Flying Bird had a lot to say in her mind, she didn't know where to say those words now. Distance 500. Opportunity. Detonate. Just as the small monsters gnawed a hole in the asteroid belt, Luna Maria decisively activated the bomb that was set in advance outside the asteroid belt. Boom! At this moment, countless dazzling brilliance rose in front of the three of them. The light was so strong that even the sun in the distance lost its brief radiance. All that was left were the small monsters that were engulfed in eating the rubble and were swept into the yellow springs by the explosion, as well as the large monsters that had just entered the rubble. They twisted and struggled in the explosion. Looking at the constantly twisting and struggling figure in the dazzling brilliance, Real Flying Bird seemed to hear the monster's wail in the explosion. "Good job, Luna Maria." The wail that emerged in her mind didn't make Real Flying Bird feel fear. Instead, it made her feel a trace of carefree. A trace of carefreeness that came from revenge. This was revenge based on witnessing the tragic death of her teammates under the siege of the monsters, while she could only escape in a sorry state. "Real, action begins. Don't get entangled by those small monsters. Luna Maria, hide yourself well and find a chance to kill those big monsters." Ray's action was very fast. Before the brilliance of the explosion had completely faded, his white Zagu Phantom launched the first wave of attack by relying on the surrounding rubble. While the white Zagu Phantom was flying rapidly, it first threw a smoke bomb to the other side of the asteroid belt. Boom! The smoke bomb exploded with sparks and instantly attracted the attention of the small monsters that were nibbling at the asteroid belt. The white Zagu Phantom rushed out from the other side and used the beam assault rifle in its hand to shoot 3 consecutive shots to blow up the rubble at the feet of the small monsters on the spot. Real. Now, first the smoke bomb, then the rapid attack. The white Zagu Phantom that successfully wiped out a group of small monsters on the spot finally attracted the attention of more monsters. Looking at the monsters that were slowly turning toward his position, Ray sent out a signal loudly. "Roger." In the smoke that hadn't dissipated yet, Polscow, equipped with the air combat backpack, rushed out like lightning. Taking advantage of the moment when most of the monster's attention was attracted by the white Zaga Phantom, he rushed into the group of large monsters that were releasing small monsters in one breath. Buzz! Polscow Da's beam assault rifle fired 3 consecutive shots and hit the nearest large monster one after another. The first shot, without any accident, hit the sharp angle that could easily break the Agamemnon-class mothership. The enemy was unscathed. The second shot accurately hit the gap between the sharp angle and the bulging sarcoma. A faint black circle appeared. The third shot, extremely fast Polskow. The moment the large monster brushed past him, he suddenly turned around and shot at the end of the monster's body. This time, it was a hole that emitted faint smoke. It pierced through. In the blink of an eye, Real Flying Bird had found the weak points of these large monsters that could break the Agamemnon-class mothership with a single blow. But it was already too late. If they could find it earlier, the Minerva wouldn't have to flee now. The MS team on board wouldn't only be Real Flying Bird, Reza Barrel, and Luna Maria Hawk. Real Flying Bird, who succeeded, was not satisfied. Instead, he cautiously adopted the strategy of quickly retreating and increasing the distance between him and the enemy. In the void, a dazzling beam of light appeared and swept across the back of Polskow, breaking more than 10 tentacles that attempted to attack Polskow on the spot. Real, be careful. It was Luna Maria. Her artillery's Zaga warrior finally began to show its power after the white Zaga phantom and Polskow attracted the enemy's attention. Luna Maria, be careful to hide. Under Luna Maria's cover, Polskow smoothly converged with the Zaga phantom. Our speculation was not wrong. After the aerial combat, Type Pulse Gundam shot out several beams of light and killed the last batch of small monsters. Real Flying Bird slowly exhaled and said, retreat to the second line of defense. The first line of defense was to use the gravel blockade laid by bombs to delay the monster's pursuit and try to find the monster's weakness. This had already been achieved. Then, it was time to retreat to the second line of defense, which was near Luna Maria's position. Real Lay, I'll cover you. Amidst the asteroid belt, beams of light appeared one after another, piercing through the large monsters that were chasing after the Pulse Gundam. In the silent vacuum, in this gravel belt full of gravel, flesh, and blood, the large monsters that were penetrated by Zaga Warrior silently crashed into the surrounding gravel. Hard, sharp angles, flesh and blood flying at high speed, instantly became the medium that triggered the gravel belt's agitation. Not good. Retreat. Lei saw the monsters that lost their lives, but did not slow down. They knocked the surrounding gravel and triggered a chain impact reaction, and immediately warned loudly. However, Zaga Warrior, who was slightly slower, was dragged down by the heavy high-energy beam cannon, so it was slower by a beat. The gravel that was knocked away crazily hit everything around it. Whether it was the gravel that had been peaceful before, or the monster's corpse that had already died, they were all affected by this wave of chain impact. In this chain impact, a gravel with a visual diameter of at least tens of meters appeared on top of Zaga Warrior's head. The moment the huge shadow shrouded, it was Luna Maria's desperate face. The gravel attack was too fast, and the excellent Zaga Warrior, whose maneuverability was far less than Polskow, had almost no way to escape. Luna Maria, Jun, and Lei's eyes widened, and their hands moved quickly to drive the Zaga Warrior at the fastest speed, trying to rescue her before the gravel smashed Zaga Warrior. However, whether it was Polskow or Zaga's Phantom, they couldn't appear beside Zaga Warrior in time to rescue her. What's more, around the two, there were already other monsters that appeared, blocking them from rescuing Luna Maria. Buzz, Jun, and Lei were doing their best to rescue her, and Luna Maria wasn't an ordinary woman who would sit and wait for death. When the Minerva was being chased by monsters, Luna Maria had seen death and had come in close contact with death. Therefore, she definitely wouldn't allow herself to die on the battlefield like this. She definitely wouldn't die like this. The high-energy beam cannon's attack hit the gravel one after another, but it couldn't shatter it in the roar of the explosion. How can this be? Impossible. In front of her was the last high-energy beam cannon's ammunition, and Luna Maria couldn't accept that the high-energy beam cannon that could penetrate the battleship's armor in a few hits actually returned without any results. Buzz! The last round of ammunition was fired, setting off a violent explosion. In the rumbling explosion, Luna Maria saw countless gravel flying out. It shattered. Before the surprise could rise, a sharp shadow impressively tore apart the explosion and directly pounced on Zaga Warrior. It was actually that large monster. The reason why the high-energy beam cannon couldn't shatter the gravel was because the gravel was actually a large monster in disguise. The monster's attack speed was extremely fast. It was so fast that even Jun and Ray didn't have time to react, and it had already rushed to the front of the Zaga Warrior. The sharp horn that could break the Agamemnon-class mothership seemed to be able to stab Luna Maria's eyes. Is this the end? Since the Minerva rescued Luna Maria, who had been in a bloody battle until now and witnessed the death of her comrades, calmed down at this moment. Junrei, help me tell Myling. Let her be. What nonsense are you talking about? In an instant, an unfamiliar voice interrupted the trio's communication channel. At the same time, the sharp horn that should have penetrated the Zaga Warrior didn't pierce the cockpit. Because at the moment when Luna Maria was about to be pierced by the sharp horn, a pair of steel wings impressively appeared in front of her. No! Before Luna Maria could react, the pair of steel wings disintegrated, turning into fragments that flew into the gravel belt. Only a few inexplicable colorful lights were left behind. She could barely make out a huge black shadow with a human silhouette. Aldnoah reactor output normal. Dimensional screen unfolded normal. Armed wings distribution program normal. It has entered the predetermined position. Monitoring program. Start. In the darkness, Ray Minkai's voice slowly sounded. The moment when the image from the outside appeared in front of Ray Minkai again, it was the moment when Lancelot King's sword raised his hand and swallowed the large monster with sharp horns. Chapter 816. In front of the huge monster, a trace of color ripples gradually appeared, and the pure white body was completely revealed in front of Luna Maria. The huge monster that almost buried Luna Maria was split in half, and it passed by the artillery-type Zaga Warrior like lightning. At this moment, the scenery that quickly passed by the left and right sides was captured by the artillery-type Zaga Warrior's electronic eyes and presented in front of Luna Maria's eyes. First, a grayish-black hard structure appeared. Then, it quickly turned from grayish-black to bright red. It changed from hard to a bloody mess. It wasn't until the two long shadows completely passed by the artillery-type Zaga Warrior's left and right sides that Luna Maria's gaze was able to refocus on the few drops of bright red liquid that dyed the artillery-type Zaga Warrior's electronic eyes red. At this moment, Luna Maria's lips trembled, but she couldn't make any sound. Scream? Fear? Perhaps this was a normal human reaction. However, Luna Maria, who witnessed the insufferably arrogant Earth Joint Squadron being killed in seconds and being chased by monsters and paid a heavy sacrifice to escape to the asteroid belt, was no longer an ordinary woman. Moreover, in front of the electronic eyes that were dyed red, there was a figure that shocked Luna Maria. Just by simply raising his hand, he easily killed the big monster that caused the Agamemnon-class mothership to die with a grievance. It was as easy as blowing off dust, as if the monster just happened to appear in front of the body that suddenly appeared, and then inexplicably split into two halves. If the artillery-type Zaga Warrior that was blocked by Lancelot King's sword behind couldn't see how the big monster was killed, then Real Flying Bird and Ray, who were one step behind and just happened to be able to see the scene just now, were able to see it at a glance. However, the two who witnessed Lancelot King's sword killing a terrifying monster with just a raise of his hand couldn't react in time. Then what happened? Real Flying Bird's eyes were wide open, and there was a trace of fear for the unknown on her face. Then, I don't know. Among the trio, Ray, who was the most knowledgeable and even had the support of a top scientist in the field of human research, could not find any clues. The only thing he knew was that the terrifying monster had collided with Lancelot King's sword's right hand and was then split into two by an invisible force. No, Ray was shocked and suddenly remembered the moment just now. That was not killing. He did not cut it open either. Instead, the monster seemed to have been devoured by something and was split into two halves. And the part that was devoured happened to be similar to the outline of Lancelot King's sword. Did you devour it? Ray frowned, but he quickly signaled for Luna Maria to quickly return to the team. Although Lancelot King's sword was very unfamiliar to them, judging from its behavior of saving Luna Maria, at least it was not an enemy. Now, it seemed like there was no need for the trio to make a move. When Real, Flying Bird, and Ray respectively piloted their own bodies to meet up with the shelling-type Zaga warriors, they realized that this battle seemed to have nothing to do with them. In just less than a minute, Lancelot King's sword had already fought with nearly 1,000 large and small monsters. Compared to the fiery light that soared into the sky and the rumbling explosions when the trio fought with them, Lancelot King's sword's attack appeared cold and cheerless, yet was also abnormally strange. Just relying on his fists and feet, he rushed up to those monsters. He threw a punch. The monster that was hit had an inexplicable gap on its body. There was no warning. There was no abnormality. With just a punch, the monster with a gap on its body stopped moving. It crashed into the surrounding gravel and turned into meat paste. Silence. Incomparable silence. Now that Lancelot King's sword had stopped that group of terrifying monsters, the trio did not rejoice that they had survived a calamity. Instead, they felt a trace of strangeness, a trace of fear towards something they could not understand. Let's contact the Minerva. There's no need for us to make a move here. After Ray took a few deep breaths, he made a decision that was equivalent to retreat. Real, Flying Bird, and Luna Maria looked at each other and nodded in unison. On the other hand, Ray Minkai looked relaxed. The powerful performance brought by the LD Noah furnace was indeed somewhat beyond his expectations. The dimensional barrier that could easily wipe out a large universe beta was so powerful and mesmerizing. It was so powerful that the driver did not need to pay attention to any movements on the battlefield. As long as he locked onto the target, he could solve all the problems. There was no doubt that even if it was driven by a 3-year-old child, it could still complete the vast majority of the missions of killing the target. Of course, the above was all nonsense. Not to mention the level of the driver, it was definitely not the turn of a 3-year-old child to board this body and fight with the enemy. In the intense battle in the eyes of the trio, a burst of urgent warning woke up Ray Minkai, who was a little distracted. As his gaze moved, Ray Minkai found that 2 huge shadows, one from the left and one from the right, were rapidly attacking from both sides of Lancelot's Sword of the King. It looked like they were going to perish together. Humph. Stupid. The menacing enemies were unable to achieve their goal in the end. Even if these large universe beta were determined to drag Lancelot's Sword of the King into the underworld, even if they were to collide with their own kind, they were unable to threaten Lancelot's Sword of the King, who had already activated the dimensional barrier. Light black ripples appeared and shrouded Lancelot King's sword. While the optical camouflage used for camouflage was constantly fluctuating, the 2 large cosmic-type BETs also ended up with their heads separated from their bodies like the others of their kind. In an instant, there were countless blood droplets floating around Lancelot's Sword of the King, and the remains of monsters with many smooth cuts on their bodies. This was a silent slaughter, a crushing battle with the dimensional barrier of absolute defense against the universe beta, who only knew how to use a normal attack and the advantage of numbers to suppress the enemy. However, facing the unbreakable dimensional barrier, the universe beta, who had completely forgotten about the trio, was still shrinking the encirclement of Lancelot's Sword of the King, looking like they would not give up until they were dead. Unwilling to retreat? This is a bit unexpected. Ray Minkai's gaze swept across the screen in front of him and fell on the interface that displayed the total number of enemies. The number is 761. Although the dimensional barrier is very refreshing, the efficiency is still a bit slow. There's no other way. I can't just reach out and kill them one by one, right? Indeed, for biological enemies, as long as the dimensional barrier was touched, they would either die or be injured, but in the face of more than one enemy, the efficiency became low. For this reason, when designing Lancelot's Sword of the King, he read a lot of information about the original Mars Knight's exclusive body. In addition, Royd, who was a new steel pulla enthusiast, naturally put the idea of perfecting Lancelot's Sword of the King's attack on multiple enemies on the pair of steel wings known as the armed composite wings. At first, the fundamental purpose of this pair of armed composite wings was to allow Lancelot's Sword of the King to obtain dynamic intelligence of the outside world when the dimensional barrier was unfolded. But at that time, Royd happened to get a certain series of steel pulla, and he had a special fondness for a unique armed system in this series. Therefore, the armed composite wings evolved from the initial simple monitoring function to a composite armed system that took into account surveillance, attack, and other means. As the colorful optical camouflage rippled, Lancelot's Sword of the King first became blurry and dark, and then in the blink of an eye, revealed a pure white steel body with golden lines. Then a light green, prismatic, cube-shaped shimmering barrier appeared around Lancelot's Sword of the King, and the armed composite wings that were released before also returned to the surroundings of Lancelot's Sword of the King, as if they were the many knights guarding the king. But please note, the armed composite wings that returned to guard Lancelot's Sword of the King only occupied half of the 56 armed composite wings that made up the steel wings. The other half that had not returned, the 28 armed composite wings, had already sneaked all the way behind Universe Star Beta under the cover of the complex terrain of the Stone Belt. Attack! My kin! The moment Lei Mingkai's slightly Chinibyu command came out of his mouth, the 28 armed composite wings that sneaked behind the Unable-type betas suddenly burst out with a storm of light beams, piercing through more than 10 large Unable-type betas that had no time to react. Immediately afterward, the 28 armed composite wings that succeeded did not continue to shoot. Instead, after turning off all the optical cameras on their bodies, they tore apart the flesh and blood of the next target at Mach 3. If the vacuum could transmit sound, then at this moment, the armed composite wings that occupied this universe were like a pack of hungry wolves tearing apart and gnawing on their prey. It was not an attack made by a beam attack, but it followed the technology on the radiation vibration blade that Lancelot used before. No, it was a brand new technology. With the breakthrough of this new technology, Royd, who had almost become a heavy steel puller enthusiast, did not hesitate to use the armed composite wing system to restore the performance of a certain armed series. Jian Feng? I didn't expect Royd to be so fanatical. Looking at the armed composite wings that were constantly nibbling away at the enemy, Rei Mingkai could not help but sigh. Who would have thought that Royd could use the technology in his hands to recreate the scene of Jian Feng wantonly killing the enemy? It's just that the energy storage on the armed composite wings is a little low, but the energy storage could not keep up, but the quantity was enough. The 28 armed composite wings that were hovering around Lancelot King's sword moved together and pounced on the enemy. It was the time for the 28 armed composite wings that launched the first round of attacks to return. It's almost time. The Minerva should be almost in contact with the throne of command. Then it's time to end this greeting. Not long after, the 28 armed composite wings that had been fully charged launched and surrounded Lancelot King's sword, completely strangling the last remaining enemy. Chapter 817. It was a complete suppression. It was just a lone mech, yet it was able to defeat the monster that had wiped out the Earth's United B squadron in an instant. It was even able to kill off the last monster after that. It was a terrifying battle record. Looking at the armed compound flying wings that swallowed hundreds of monsters like a pack of hungry wolves returning from all directions, after circling around Lancelot King's sword several times, they obediently returned to the back of Lancelot King's sword one by one, turning into steel wings again. Real Flying Bird and Luna Maria couldn't help but look at each other across the screen. The enemy was terrifying enough, but this strange body that suddenly appeared was even more terrifying. Whether it was this strange and terrifying attack that had just appeared, or the armed compound flying wings that were released later, they all told the trio a fact. The world they were in now seemed to have undergone some unknown changes. Evidence, except for the group of monsters that suddenly appeared. There was only the strange body that destroyed the monsters. That is not the body of the Earth's united fleet, and, at the same time, it is not our Zaph's body. Although there was a trace of doubt in Ray's voice, it was more of anxiety. "Ray, what are you talking about?" Luna Maria didn't react for a while. "Ray, Luna Maria, look. That body is sending a signal to us." At this time, "Real flying birds!" exclamation woke Ray up. In the next second, Ray, who instinctively activated the signal deciphering program, suddenly woke up. What if the body he was piloting, or Zaph's signal deciphering program, couldn't decipher the other party's signal? One must know. In the next second, Luna Maria's voice came. This is the signal channel used by our Zaph. How is it possible? Didn't Ray just say that it is not our Zaph's body?" "What?" Ray's gaze focused, and he had already seen the message after the deciphering program deciphered the signal from Lancelot King's sword on the screen. This is the signal channel that Zaph abandoned after the Battle of Yakin-Duway. How can there still be people using this signal channel? The doubts deepened, but Ray seemed to have put down something in his heart and became slightly relaxed. Regardless of whether this signal channel was useless or not, the people who could use this signal channel could still be on Zaph's side. Based on this, after Ray signaled to True Flying Bird and Luna Maria to be on guard, he took the initiative to send a signal to Lancelot King's sword to express his gratitude and inquire about his identity. When Ray Minkai saw the deciphered message, he couldn't help but smile. From a moment the Minerva and the trio appeared in front of him, Ray Minkai suspected whether the Minerva and the trio had escaped from the seed world he was familiar with, or had they gotten lost in another seed world. But no matter where the Minerva and the trio came from, Lay was probably the only one who would act so cautiously. "This is Night K. You have entered our airspace. Please report your location and purpose of action." Night K. Code name? When the trio heard Ray Minkai's self-introduction, they immediately looked at each other. "Lay, do we also use code names?" Jun Fein Niao asked. "No, I'll be in charge of communication." "True. Be alert of your surroundings." Luna Maria, contact the Minerva as soon as possible. Understood. Then, Ray took the initiative to send a video call request to Lancelot King's sword. This was undoubtedly a test, but Ray Minkai accepted the request without hesitation. However, as the video communication was successfully connected, Ray saw a scene that shocked him. The mask, which was mainly white and had golden patterns around it, covered the face that he should have seen in the dungeon. It was the face of Night K. Just like the name that Ray used as a code name, the true identity of the man on the other side of the screen was hidden. "Nice to meet you. I'm Night K. Please report your location and purpose of action." The calm voice and calm demeanor made Ray vaguely see a shadow that had already passed away. After a moment of astonishment, Ray quickly calmed down. "I'm Rezabarrel. I belong to the Minerva. When I was on a mission, I was chased by a group of monsters and came to this gravel belt at the moment of life and death. I'm very sorry. We didn't know beforehand that this was your domain." "Monsters? You mean that group of monsters called Beta are chasing you? Chasing the Minerva?" Ray Minkai raised his eyebrows and was about to speak when a message from the Throne of Command suddenly popped up. "Oh, Rezabarrel. It seems that it's time to invite you to our place. Not long ago, when Lancelot King's sword swept past the Minerva and rushed into the gravel belt to kill, the Minerva that was lucky enough to escape the gravel belt also received a greeting from the Throne of Command." What the hell is that? Satellite Fortress? The Minerva's vice captain, Arthur Chen, pointed at the behemoth that appeared on the screen and exclaimed, "Calm down, Arthur." After Talia Kratos scolded the shouting Arthur, she looked worriedly at the behemoth in the distance. At present, The Minerva situation could be considered as having escaped the pursuit of that group of terrifying monsters. But there was a behemoth in front of them that was not inferior to the Yakin Due satellite fortress. In particular, the strong visual impact of the Yakin Due satellite fortress, which was built entirely out of cold metal, made Talia Karates, one of Zaf's newest battleships, unable to help but be shocked by the visual impact of the Yakin Due satellite fortress. Mei Ling, can you call the other party? Talia first looked at Mei Ling, then pondered for a moment. In her opinion, from the glimpse of Lancelot King's sword just now, there was no way it could be separated from the behemoth that appeared in front of them. Then, based on this speculation, this behemoth probably wouldn't be like that group of monsters, shouting to kill the Minerva. Yes, I'm trying now. Mei Ling's actions were very fast. However, before she could send the first greeting from the Minerva's communication channel was hijacked by an unknown signal. Warning, this is the domain of the Britannia Empire, the domain of his sovereign throne. Warships of unknown origin, please immediately stop all actions in this domain and report to your subordinates. Warning, warning. Dazzling red flashes, sharp warning sounds. These made Talia clench her hands uncontrollably. The speculation, just now, was instantly overturned by reality. Captain. As the vice captain, Arthur still acted like the other crew members and was very dependent on Talia. This made Talia subconsciously feel a trace of resentment towards the person who caused this scene and was hiding behind the scenes. Calm down, Arthur. After scolding Arthur again, Talia stood up and looked at Mei Ling. Mei Ling, yes. Captain, we're dealing with it now. Our communication channel seems to have been hijacked by the other party. Mei Ling's expression became somewhat flustered. No matter how one looked at it, the loss of control and allowing the other party to broadcast the warning on the system screen could be considered as Mei Ling's negligence. No need to panic. Mei Ling. In other words, the other party can also hear us talking. Am I right? Talia's expression gradually became calm. The situation could not get any worse. The huge object in the distance, the Minerva's communication channel, was hijacked. Although it was very embarrassing, it was all proof of one fact. The other party could communicate. This was already enough. I am the captain of the Minerva, Zaf's cosmic warship, Talia Karates. We have no intention of offending your domain, but because of the enemy's pursuit, we came here in a panic. If we have offended you, please forgive us. Just as Talia finished speaking, there was a burst of exclamations in the bridge. It was light, a streak of light that had never appeared on the Minerva, nor would it ever appear, suddenly appeared on the bridge. In the light that came from nowhere, a graceful and beautiful figure appeared in front of Talia and the others. It was a beautiful woman with fiery red hair, pointed ears, and a beautiful face that could charm all living things. Her lower body was that of a mermaid. Her appearance instantly attracted the attention of almost all the crew members in the bridge. Even the majority of the female crew members were unavoidably the same. Talia's expression was absent-minded, but in the blink of an eye, she used her strong willpower to wake up. However, she saw that most of the crew members, including Arthur and Mei Ling, were in a daze and did not react to the outside world at all. Please don't worry. Your crew members won't have any problems. It's just that we need to be quiet. The mermaid floated lightly in the air. Quiet? You're controlling my crew members. The strange mermaid. It was a strange scene. It caused Talia's nerves to tense up. This was something that exceeded Talia's understanding of the world. Something that was within the scope of common sense. The mermaid laughed lightly. Like the sirens in the ancient legends, she let out a bewitching song that caused Talia's mind to become absent-minded again. Who exactly are you? In an instant, the piercing pain from her lips caused Talia to wake up with a start. It turned out that Talia's instincts caused her to bite her lips unconsciously, stimulating her consciousness to return. My name is Serene, the central program that controls the throne. Talia Karates from Zaft. Welcome to the Britannia Empire. The light once again descended from the void, and the bewitching mermaid quietly disappeared. What replaced her was a holy and noble goddess with long hair and a third eye between her eyebrows. Chapter 8:18. How would a baby feel when facing the legendary Titan? Talia didn't know the answer to this hypothesis, and she wouldn't know. But now, she knew how she felt when facing an existence with incomprehensible power and the power to kill her and the crew of the Minerva. That feeling of absolute powerlessness made Talia unable to even muster the courage to struggle. This was the complete opposite of the situation when they were surrounded and chased by those monsters. She couldn't understand what kind of existence the woman who called herself Sharon Epp was. At times, she would transform into a charming mermaid. At times, she would transform into a holy and noble goddess. Just by standing there and speaking with that gentle and moving voice, she was able to control everyone on the Minerva. If the other party didn't want to keep her here, she might have fallen into the same state as the other crew members and fallen under Sharon's control. Don't worry, the goddess with the third eye quietly disappeared. When she reappeared, she laughed softly in Talia's ear. This is just to prevent unnecessary commotion. We have no intention of harming you. Talia turned around abruptly, but she couldn't find any trace of Sharon. She could only reprimand her with a sharp voice. To prevent unnecessary commotion, we're just refugees being chased by the enemy. We don't pose any threat to you. Unfortunately, Talia's reprimand didn't provoke any anger from Sharon. She didn't even react. Looking at Sharon, who had reappeared not far away, Talia's sense of powerlessness grew stronger. He's back. At this moment, Talia, who heard Sharon's voice, noticed a hint of a smile at the corner of Sharon's mouth. It was a smile that she had once had. It was an expression a young girl would show when she was about to meet the person she loved. Wait, in that instant, Talia subconsciously recalled the way Sharon had addressed herself when she first appeared. That colossal object, the central program of the satellite stronghold known as the Sovereign Throne. As an AI program created by humans to control terrifying weapons, how could it show an expression no different from a young girl in love? What was wrong with this world? At this moment, Talia's heart was in chaos. The monster that had chased after the Minerva and almost sunk it. There was also this woman who claimed to be an AI, but had emotions that were no different from humans. All of this was overturning Talia's understanding of the world. Be it the Earth Union, Zaft, or even the many third forces in Talia's world, none of them could do such a shocking thing. Truth be told, no matter how chaotic Talia's heart was, no matter how overturned her worldview was, she was still alive. Now that the Minerva had fallen into Sharon's control, it was already set in stone. Just as Sharon had said, taking control of the Minerva's crew in the blink of an eye was just to avoid unnecessary disturbances. Otherwise, with Sharon's computing power and the massive resources of the central computer, controlling the Minerva would be a simple matter. Two guiding lasers shot out from the throne's port. The moment they connected with the Minerva, the landing ship that Dilindar had high hopes for, the Minerva, which represented Zaft's highest technology, officially fell under the control of the throne. And this information was also sent to Ray Minkai under Sharon's control. Not long after, Zagu released the Hook Claw and used it to attack the Zaga warrior, who had used up all of his energy and could only rely on the backup energy to maintain his communication and survival system. The sword of Lancelot King that Zagu's phantom brought back returned to the vicinity of the throne of governance. Along with them were Pulse Gauta, who didn't have much energy left, but could only rely on the help of Lancelot King's sword and Zaga's phantom. What the hell is this? Earth Union's satellite fortress. In the dimly lit cockpit, Luna Maria couldn't help but cry out in surprise when she saw the enormous body of the commander's throne. No, that's not Earth Union's satellite fortress. Ray immediately denied Luna Maria's words, then said, "Don't worry. It's also not Zaft's satellite fortress. Although the distance is a bit far, the scale of this satellite fortress has already exceeded Zaft's Yukinduwe. As expected of Reza Barrel. That's right. This is not Earth Union Satellite Fortress, nor Zaf Satellite Fortress, but a satellite fortress owned by the Britannia Empire and directly under Her Majesty Euphemia Libertania. Ray Minkai smiled and told Ray and Luna Maria the basic information about the throne through wired communication. However, the strange thing was that Lei Minkai had forgotten about the Pulse Gundam behind him and the real flying bird sitting in its cockpit. On purpose? Or unintentional? Maybe only Ray Minkai knew. It was only when the guiding laser of the ruling throne was clearly visible and connected to the Zaga warriors and Zagu phantoms that had lost their ability to move due to the exhaustion of their energy that Lancelot King's sword retracted the claws that had helped them along the way. Reza Barrel, Luna Maria Hawk, and Real Flying Bird. Your mothership Minerva has been anchored in the throne's port half an hour ago. I believe you can't wait to return to your ship. Then, see you in an hour. As the steel wings stretched out, Lancelot King's sword followed the guidance laser and flew into the throne. He didn't doubt that the trio would turn around and leave. Of course, in the current situation of running out of energy, Ray would inevitably make the most correct choice. Even Pulse Gautda, who had been hanging behind and pretending to be in a hurry, did the same when Lancelot King's sword left and accelerated to the side of Zaga Warrior and Zaga's Phantom. Ray, Luna Maria, I can't contact the Minerva. Real Flying Bird's gaze was fixed on Lancelot King's sword on the screen with extremely complicated emotions in her eyes. It was gratitude, it was doubt, it was even more worry. The appearance of Lancelot King's sword was undoubtedly the key to saving them. However, the Minerva, which had disconnected first, had never contacted the trio. It wasn't until Ray Minkai brought them here that they were told that the Minerva had docked in the port of the satellite fortress called the Throne half an hour ago. Such a puzzling situation made Real Flying Bird feel a trace of worry in her heart. She was worried about the safety of the Minerva. She was even more worried about the safety of the people she was familiar with. Let's go. Now, the choice we can make is to enter this satellite fortress and meet up with the Minerva. When the time comes, we will know everything. Ray slowly exhaled, whether it's what we see or what they want us to see. On the other hand, before Ray Minkai, who had just walked down from Lancelot King's sword, could express his gratitude to the applause and congratulations around him, Ethelum Lamb came up to him with Countess Firmian. A faint blush could be seen on Ethelum Lamb's small face. This was probably the aftermath of the previous bold move. Therefore, the wiser technical team, including Firmian, saw a subtle scene. Ray Minkai and Ethelum Lamb were about to speak, but at the same time, they made the same move of giving the opening speech to each other. For a moment, the scene became extremely subtle, causing Firmian and the other wiser technical team members to look back and forth. It was very lively. Ahem. Everyone, Lancelot King's sword's performance in the initial battle was very good, but after closing the dimensional barrier, the attack method is a bit monotonous. I hope you can continue to improve. In time, I believe that Lancelot King's sword will be able to live up to its name and become a divine weapon to protect the Empire. Fortunately, the stalemate between the two didn't last long. Ray Minkai found a reason to send the surrounding wiser technicians away. Congratulations to your highness for your victory. Perhaps it was because of the departure of his subjects, but Ethelum had also gradually loosened up. No, this is a matter of course. It's not a battle worthy of congratulations. What's more, the enemy didn't use their full strength. Ray Minkai shook his head and recalled the enemies he encountered in the previous battle. There were many enemies, but among those monsters, there was never an individual that posed a great threat to the mech. For example, an individual with long-range energy attacks, including the light class. If there were such individuals in the previous battle, Ray Minkai would not have dared to close the dimensional barrier in the face of an army of thousands of betas. Obviously, Ethelum Lamb knew the meaning of Ray Minkai's words. Is Your Highness talking about the light class individuals? Oh, Your Highness, you know about the light class? This time, it was Ray Minkai's turn to be surprised. At present, in the Britannia Empire, there were no more than 5 people who knew about the existence of betas, and these people did not include Ethel Lamb. Yes, not long ago, Sharon received news from the imperial capital. It was a rescue report about Teresa's clerk. In the report, the existence of the betas was mentioned. Moreover, Ambassador Lakis Klein also specifically suggested at the end of the report that the beta's movements should be immediately investigated. Teresa? Did she encounter the betas while rescuing the son of Dan's slave? Lei Minkai knew that Teresa had led a team to rescue the pill slave son. However, what he did not expect was that in addition to the betas in the universe, there were also betas on Earth, and they were even encountered by Teresa, who was rescuing the son of Dan's slave? Yes, when Teresa's clerk arrived, the son of Dan's slave had already been besieged by the betas. Fortunately, the rescue was timely. Not only was the son of Dan's slave successfully rescued, but it also returned to a naval base on the west coast of the Empire with the help of Avalon's new levitation system to await repair. Is that so? Is there any other news from the imperial capital? Ethel Lamb nodded slightly and looked up at the electronic clock above the wall. In 15 minutes, His Majesty will hold an online meeting. It will inform him of the current situation facing the Empire and the countermeasures needed to be taken for possible future situations. Chapter 819. The sun was setting. The imperial capital that had yet to be washed away was covered with a layer of golden veil. Under this layer of golden veil, people shuttled back and forth on both sides of the street, completely ignoring the many machines parked at the end of the street. Even if the huge machines called the Lionheart Knight were too eye-catching, the hurried crowd only glanced at them for a moment before they turned around and continued to complete their own tasks. This was the moment when the Britannia Empire began to recover after the rebellion. Under Euphemia's constant signing of the Empress orders, the citizens of the Empire who had awakened from their slumber all received their own missions, as well as the current situation of the Britannia Empire and the dire situation it was in. At first, some of the citizens of the Empire who could not bear it could not understand or accept that the Empire had been affected by the super disaster called world fusion. It slipped from the original space-time dimension and fell into an unknown and unfamiliar dimension. Suicide, madness, there were even small-scale riots, happened continuously within a week. But Euphemia had foreseen this and assigned the newly awakened Cornelia to carry out the task of suppressing the riots. Although Cornelia also had doubts about the world fusion, as the best frontline commander of the royal family, Cornelia naturally knew what she should do. Therefore, under the deterrence of the name of the witch, the suppression force brought by Cornelia quickly quelled the riots that only had time to appear but not spread. Thank you for your hard work, sister. When the last ray of the setting sun fell, Euphemia, who had finally finished the last document, slowly put down the pen and looked up at Cornelia, who had completed the task. This is what I should do. Cornelia responded to Euphemia meticulously. That look made Euphemia sigh helplessly. Sister, there's only the two of us here now. There's no need to be so obsessed with etiquette. As Euphemia spoke, she stood up and walked to Cornelia's side. She reached out and shook Cornelia's right hand, just like a younger sister acting coquettishly towards her elder sister. Looking at Euphemia, who was the empress of the empire and carried the future of the empire on her shoulders, Cornelia's stern face finally softened. UFFI, although there are only the two of us here, you have to pay attention to your behavior. Of course I know, but now standing in front of me is my biological sister. Why do you have to put on airs as the empress? Euphemia slightly pouted and put on an angry look. Seeing this, Cornelia couldn't help but laugh. Really? Okay, up to you. UFFI, do you want to take a break? Then, Cornelia looked at the clock on the wall. It's time for dinner. But Euphemia shook her head. Dinner can be eaten later. Now, sister, come with me. This is... For a moment, Cornelia, who didn't realize what was going on, suddenly remembered something. UFFI, is it time for the online conference? Euphemia nodded. Yes, there's still 5 minutes before the online conference begins. I believe Kai and the others are already waiting online. Just as Euphemia said, when the most distinguished royal sisters of the Britannia Empire came to the holographic projection of the online conference, Teresa, Ithilum, Lacus, Ray Minkai, and Vervian Sharonep had been waiting for a long time. The light fell from the dome and constructed the conference room with the flag of the Britannia Empire hanging above and a round table below. As the last ray of light faded away, Teresa, Ithilum, Lax, Lay Minkai, and Vervian Sharon Ep appeared in the high-back chairs placed around the round table one after another. Sorry for the wait. Everyone, when Euphemia sat down in the main seat, she nodded to the people she trusted and relied on. Cornelia stood behind Euphemia and silently watched the meeting that would determine the future of the Empire. No, I just came online. Lay Minkai smiled and looked at Teresa, who was sitting opposite him. Teresa, I heard that the son of Dan's slave was saved. Originally, as the opening remarks, Euphemia should be the one to say it. But in view of the relationship between Ray Minkai and Euphemia, no one felt that there was any problem. What's more, Euphemia herself had no opinion on this. Seeing that Ray Minkai asked about her as soon as he opened his mouth, Teresa nodded first and then showed a look of relief. Yes, as your highness said, when I led Avalon to the coordinates of the son of Dan's slave, I found the monsters that had only been seen in the Empire's confidential intelligence. The beta was besieging the son of Dan's slave. Losses? Euphemia and Ray Minkai looked at each other and immediately asked. Even though Euphemia had seen it in the report submitted by Teresa before, asking her directly would be more detailed than reading the report. 30 soldiers were killed, nearly 100 were seriously injured, 6 AS were lost, and 3 remained. What's more, in addition to running out of ammunition and food, the son of Dan's slave's power furnace is seriously damaged and has completely lost the ability to navigate. Currently, a further comprehensive inspection is being carried out in the naval base on the west coast of the Empire. In other words, the son of Dan's slave has lost its combat ability. This was bad news. In view of the current situation around the Britannia Empire, having one more trump card in hand would give them more confidence in the face of the unknown and unexpected situations. But now, it seemed that the son of Dan's slave would not be of any use. No, this is not bad news. At this moment, Vervian spoke. At the same time, a projection screen appeared in front of everyone. Ray Minkai took a closer look and found that in addition to groups of constantly changing data, the information presented on the screen was a warship design pattern that slowly rotated, showing the shape of different angles. This is the son of Dan's slave. Although this was a design that modified the rear half of the warship from propeller propulsion to 2 large conical nozzles on the left and right and several auxiliary nozzles on the top and bottom, Ray Minkai still recognized the son of Dan's slave from the front half of the warship. Yes, although the loss of the son of Dan's slave's mobility is a regrettable thing, it may be an opportunity. Vervian looked at Teresa. The latter took over the conversation. I have confirmed the situation on the son of Dan's slave. They are my former subordinates. Therefore, in the face of losing contact with the Mithril headquarters and the son of Dan's slave losing its combat ability, most of my subordinates chose to listen to my command again. Therefore, the son of Dan's slave may be able to carry out a modification with the support of the Empire. Modification can be done. Originally, the son of Dan's slave was designed according to the underwater combat environment. If it was just a modification of the MS, Ray Minkai naturally wouldn't ask such a question. But when it came to a warship with a more complex design and a wider range of aspects, especially a warship from another world, the topic of modification was not something that could be done easily. Indeed, but we have already found the best solution. Vervian nodded and showed a confident smile. Relying on our computing power, the modification plan of the son of Dan's slave has been preliminarily finalized. The rest is the energy needed to start construction. This doesn't require the current manpower and material resources of the Empire, because we have a friend that we can rely on. Friend, Euphemia pondered for a moment and already thought of the friend mentioned by Vervian. Your Excellency Lacus, is Miss Nana willing to help us? Noticing that Euphemia was looking at her, Lux nodded slightly. Yes. Mimi and Nana volunteered to share some of the pressure. From Mimi's point of view, the Britannia Empire being affected by the super disaster of the world fusion is also partly her responsibility. Is that so? Then I'll have to trouble them. Later, I'll personally thank them. After receiving Lacus's acknowledgement, Lacus first thanked her and then said, Actually, Mimi doesn't have to mind so much. This isn't her fault. Your Majesty is right. Strictly speaking, I'm the one who released the girl, so I'm afraid I'm related to this super disaster. Ray Minkai thought of the strange space and the scene where he met Anna, who was sleeping in the crystal coffin, and said with a bitter smile. And as the other party involved, Lacus was the same. Okay, there's no need to brood over the past. With Miss Nana's help, the son of Dan Slave can complete the upgrade of the power system and the corresponding equipment in the shortest time possible. When the time comes, not only can the son of Dan Slave maintain its original underwater navigation ability, but it can also fulfill the need to travel in the universe. While interrupting Ray Minkai's bitter smile, Vivian directly pulled everyone's attention back to the son of Dan Slave. Although that's the case, the AS on the son of Dan Slave doesn't meet the requirements for space combat. Teresa pinched her braid with some distress. Captain Teresa, regarding the AS problem, maybe I have some say. Cornelia, who was standing behind Euphemia, stepped forward and spoke under Euphemia's signal. Your Highness Cornelia, do you have a way? Teresa was a little surprised. No, this isn't a way. Strictly speaking, this is related to His Highness Ray Minkai's Raging Flame Demon Sword. Because the improvement plan for the Raging Flame Demon Sword continues to progress, a plan for a new type of body was passed to me not long ago. A new type of body? A new type of body with a lambda drive system installed? Everyone present was already familiar with Ray Minkai's Raging Flame Demon Sword, and they were even more aware of the powerful power it contained. But what Teresa didn't expect was that the Empire still continued to promote the project of cracking the lambda drive system. Yes, it's a new type of body designed for multi-purpose and extremely changeable combat environments, although it's not much of a problem to continue to use the AS in the atmosphere. But the son of Dan Slave that completes the modification will also be involved in the universe battlefield. At that time, with the performance of the M9, I'm afraid it won't be able to adapt to the more complex and dangerous universe battlefield. In this regard, Teresa couldn't find any reason to object. As a Mithril, Teresa knew very well that the M9 had inherent flaws in its design. Originally, these flaws were dispensable for the Earth where Mithril was located. But in today's changeable world, it became a fatal flaw. So, while the son of Dan Slave is being modified, let Melissa Mao and the others adapt to the new body as soon as possible. Chapter 820. In addition, the refugees taken in by the son of Dan Slave have been settled in temporary settlements near the port through the Empire. Teresa's speech came to an end after she finished explaining the final arrangements for the son of Dan Slave. Next, it came to the topic of the Britannia Empire's satellite fortress in the universe, the Throne of Command. The technology used by the ship is not the technology system we are familiar with, and it is even different from the technology of the world I came from. Based on the technological system used to design and manufacture that ship, there isn't much of a difference between the current technological system of the Britannia Empire, which is currently integrating multiple technological systems. The first to speak was Sharon Epp, who coexisted with Vervian. While Vervian assisted the Empire in completing various tasks, Sharon Epp was also controlling the Throne of Command and observing various threats from the universe. Generally, Euphemia asked, Yes, if our Empire's flagship, Avalon, encounters that warship on the battlefield, the radiation shield technology used by Avalon is enough to resist most of the ship's attacks. Of course, The positron siege cannon used by the ship is likely to pose a threat to the radiation shield. On the other hand, most of the live ammunition on Avalon cannot cause damage to the laminated armor in a short period of time. Except for Freya. As soon as Sharon finished speaking, Ray Minkai added this sentence. Sharon nodded. Indeed, overall, both the Avalon and the Minerva had their own merits. Moreover, in terms of overall design, Minerva's design concept is more suitable for the universe battlefield than Avalon. Although it is difficult to say, even with the existence of the radiation shield in Freya, if Avalon is seriously damaged on the universe battlefield, I'm afraid the ship will be destroyed and the people will die. This was the truth. Even if the Britannia Empire's current technology was constantly improving, the weapon design concept was still lacking. Even with Ray Minkai, a powerful pilot who had been in the universe battlefield many times as the Empire's Night King, it was impossible for the designers responsible for designing the future warship of the Empire to achieve a breakthrough in design thinking. Now, the arrival of the Minerva was undoubtedly a breakthrough. It was a good example to use for reference. Then, please continue to analyze the overall design of the Minerva and pass the results to Royd. I'm sure he'll be very interested. Understood. By the way, Sharon, what did you find from the Minerva? Sharon raised her right hand slightly, and a new round of portraits appeared on the projection screen in front of everyone. Sharon had hacked into the various systems of the Minerva while she was controlling it. Since then, the secrets of the Minerva had become an unguarded treasure chest for Sharon. This is a partial image of the ship when it was first built. What was shown on the screen was a group of people with smiles on their faces, Kim In, who was dressed solemnly for the ceremony, and a group of black-clothed men with serious expressions who were on guard against the situation around them. Among them was a handsome man with long black hair who was walking on the red carpet towards the Minerva. Dillandar. The long-haired man was not difficult to recognize. After all, Ray Minkai and Dillandar had met a few times. However, Ray Minkai had more doubts about the Minerva and Dillandar's appearance. Sharon, are these the only images of the Minerva's first voyage? For example, do you have images of a sudden attack? Attack? Sharon narrowed her eyes slightly. Countless images flashed through her eyes in an instant, and she already had an answer. No, there was no attack on the day of the Minerva's first voyage. The ship's first voyage ceremony went very smoothly. This answer was beyond Ray Minkai's expectations. This was completely different from the attack that Ray Minkai remembered about the Minerva's first voyage ceremony. Lux, what do you think? Among everyone present, apart from Ray Minkai, perhaps only Lux was qualified to analyze the existence of the Minerva and the man behind it, Dillandar. However, Lux shook her head first, then muttered to herself for a moment before speaking. The ship's construction should have started after we left. Therefore, I can't give much of an evaluation. However, I have met this man, Gilbert Dillandar, a few times when I follow my father to public events. Lux carefully recalled her past memories. This man gives me the feeling that he is brewing something. However, back then, I was unable to see through his thoughts. Indeed, Gilbert Dillandar is indeed brewing something. However, the most important question is, does this Gilbert Dillandar come from the world that we are familiar with? Ray Minkai's question made everyone fall silent. But the Sons of Danu are all subordinates that I am familiar with. Teresa raised her own opinion on this point. Perhaps that is just an example. Euphemia shook her head and voiced out Ray Minkai and Lux's concerns. If the world that the Minerva represented was the world that Lux and Ray Minkai had experienced, then perhaps things would become simpler. However, what if it was the opposite? Or perhaps, at the same time that it was confirmed to be the world that Ray Minkai and Lux experienced, an unexpected change occurred in that world? Euphemia, who had a telepathic connection with Ray Minkai, saw through Ray Minkai's concerns from the start. No, perhaps not. Indeed, Ray Minkai's concerns were just as Euphemia had guessed. As someone who had personally experienced the Battle of Yajin Duwei, Ray Minkai knew that his actions would cause the entire world to deviate from its course, and this deviation was probably already beginning to appear. Sharon, search for D. In the blink of an eye, Sharon found the information that Ray Minkai wanted and placed it on the projection screen. Serene. When he heard Lux's soft exclamation, Ray Minkai sighed inwardly. I knew it. In the previous battle, what Ray had mentioned about the Minerva's mission to rescue D was indeed true. In addition, as a key figure who was closely related to Ray Minkai, Lux, and even Gauda, the pair of Radiance bearers installed long before history, Selene Markgrave was also on the Minerva. Moreover, along with the appearance of Selene's information, a shocking scene also surfaced. This is a space rift. A huge rift spanned across the universe, and even the colony's satellites that Plant was most proud of appeared so small in front of this rift. This is the mark I left behind when I attacked Genesis. At this moment, the figure of the white cat, State Zero, appeared beside Ray Minkai. Its golden pupils were staring at the rift that spanned across the universe. In the records of the Minerva, this rift is called the X1 Rift. It is also the key that led to the Minerva's rescue of D, and the subsequent series of events. In Sharon's narration, the photos were constantly swiped until they finally stopped at the group of black dots that appeared in the center of the rift. Beta, yes. Looking at the photos of the black dots that were constantly enlarged and restored, a name came out. TSK. I didn't expect that the rift I left behind would attract this group of disgusting bugs. The white cat, State Zero, looked at the strange and disgusting cosmic beta and could not help but laugh at itself. Ray Minkai patted his partner's furry little head. No, that's not your fault. Sharon, check the date of these photos and then compare the time of the super disaster. Understood. After a while, the answer was in front of everyone's eyes. As expected, looking at the final answer, Ray Minkai could not help but let out a long sigh. The time when the beta appeared in that world was roughly the same as the time when the world merged. Then, the Minerva did indeed come from the world we experienced. When Lakis said this conclusion, a trace of worry seemed to flash across her face. Ray Minkai knew that she was worried about Siegel Klein and her sister, Clea Klein, who should not have appeared beside Lakis but had become Lakis Klein's sister. Siegel and Clea will be fine. Lakis. Yes, I know. Although the Kingdom of Scandinavia is not a big country, it is enough to protect the safety of my father and sister. However, if you want to know more about the situation, I'm afraid you have to start with Dr. Selene. Your Majesty, I have to go up. Euphemia and Lakis looked at each other, and there seemed to be a light that Ray Minkai could not see through in the air. In the next second, the girl who controlled the power of the Empire nodded slightly. In that case, I'll have to trouble you, Ambassador. Also, I have something to entrust you with. Your Majesty, please speak. Euphemia nodded slightly. The appearance of the beta was unexpected, but from the information, the beta's range of operations is limited by Hive. The beta on land is fine, but I hope the Ambassador can personally investigate whether the beta in the universe poses a threat to the throne of governance. After that, Euphemia said again, of course, this is not an official request. It's based on my personal request, Euphemia. Your Majesty, you're exaggerating. I'll do my best. Then, Euphemia directly called out a name. Ephelum, Your Majesty, please give your orders. Ephelum, who had been acting as an audience, stood up and bowed. Due to the busy internal affairs of the Empire, we are temporarily unable to receive friends from another world. Only you and the Night King can receive friends from another world. Yes, Your Majesty. Today's meeting will end here. Captain Teresa is in charge of the matters of the son of Dan Nu. The Night King, Ephelum, and Ambassador Lakis are in charge of the matters of the Minerva. The rest will proceed according to the original plan. Yes, Your Majesty. Chapter 821. The Minerva. As usual, Talia was on duty in the captain's seat. This was the third day since she entered the throne of governance. With the Minerva docked in the middle of the throne, Real Flying Bird, Risa Bearer, and Luna Maria returned, and everything returned to normal. No, this was not normal. Apart from Talia, no one on the Minerva remembered Sharon's existence, nor did they remember what happened after the Minerva charged out of the asteroid belt. The Minerva's crew only remembered that after the Minerva charged out of the asteroid belt, it involuntarily fell into a deep sleep. Other than that, they had no recollection. Faced with this situation, even if she knew that the trio had doubts about the Minerva's situation, Talia still chose to remain silent. She concealed what happened between her and Sharon. What made Talia even more pessimistic was that even if she confessed Sharon Epps' existence, it would only be a futile struggle. Ever since the Minerva was hijacked into the throne of governance, Talia knew that her actions would affect the life and death of everyone on the ship. According to the evidence, after the Minerva entered the port, the woman named Sharon did not intercept the trio's return and some of the supplies that were sent over. Captain, Dr. Celine's communication. Just as Talia was racking her brains over the Minerva's future, Mei Ling's voice sounded. Transfer to the captain's room. Talia nodded and looked at her assistant, Arthur. Arthur, I'll leave this place to you. Remember, don't cause trouble. After a few steps, Talia warned Arthur once more. Remember, don't cause trouble. Arthur was stunned and did not seem to react. He just nodded instinctively. Regarding this, Talia could only resign herself to fate. Hopefully, the other party did not have any ill intentions. A few minutes later, Talia returned to the captain's room. After listening to Dr. Celine's report, she leaned back in her chair and remained silent. Captain Talia, are you worried that there's something wrong with the supplies sent by the people of this satellite fortress? As DS's most outstanding scientist, it was a bit of a waste for Celine to check if there were any problems with the supplies sent by the Throne of Command at Talia's request. Moreover, the meticulous Celine didn't discover any other humans apart from the crew of the Minerva when she received the supplies. From the beginning to the end, the only objects that came into contact with the Minerva were the transport drones that came in and out of the tunnel. Maybe Talia's lips moved, but she didn't dare to speak too clearly. From the moment Sharon appeared and hijacked the Minerva, a new warship built with the best of Zaph's technology, Talia knew that everyone on the ship, including herself, was most likely under Sharon's surveillance. That's right, the Minerva was no longer a secret. He sighed in his heart. Just as he was about to thank Celine, the communication from the bridge suddenly popped up. Dr. Celine, please wait a moment. On the other end of the communication, Celine didn't mind Talia's sudden action. Instead, she was shocked by Talia's subsequent action. What? The other party sent someone to contact us? The other party? Before Celine could express her doubts, she was interrupted by Talia's hurried words. Dr. Celine, I'm very sorry. Please hurry to Naku immediately. The owner of this satellite fortress has appeared, the Throne of Command. When the woman named Sharon appeared again, she brought with her this piece of news. She claimed that the special envoy of the Britannia Empire was coming and asked the Minerva to be prepared to receive her. Although the message was brief, it was enough to let Talia's heart, which had been beating wildly all this while, finally calm down. At the same time, Sharon's figure appeared in the light and gently landed beside Rei Minkai. The beautiful goddess lightly tapped her feet and turned behind Rei Minkai. Her hands gently wrapped around Rei Minkai's neck. Kai, the news has reached the ship. The female captain seems to be very nervous. As she spoke, a mischievous smile hung on Sharon's lips. Is that so? She's probably scared by you. Rei Minkai smiled and didn't take it to heart. The reason Talia Karates was nervous was because she was ignored by Sharon for a few days. Even the transportation of resources was handed over to the transport drones that only knew how to transport and didn't know how to communicate. The pressure from unilaterally blocking the Minerva's information was immense. Moreover, Rei Minkai didn't want to completely crush Talia's psychological defense. Sharon, is there anything unusual around here? Rei Minkai casually picked up the white mask beside him and put it on as he asked casually. No, nothing for the time being. From the information collected by the sensors, the area around the throne of command seems to be relatively calm. But there seems to be some movement in the gravel belt where the battle took place. Movement? Is it beta? No, maybe not. It's just some unknown weak force field reaction that can't be analyzed for the time being. When he heard that even the throne of command couldn't analyze the unknown force field reaction, Ray Minkai couldn't help but frown. From the bottom of his heart, Ray Minkai didn't think this was a good sign. Sharon, do you think this will be Beta's next attack? Light flashed in Sharon's eyes. In just an instant, thousands of possibilities converged into the final answer. There's a 60% chance. 60? Then, when we communicate with the Minerva, I'll leave it to you to be on guard. Hearing this, Sharon smiled gently. Her fair and flawless, but faintly discernible fingers gently slid across the side of Lei Mingkai's face. As long as you say. The next second, the figure dissipated, leaving behind the automatic door that opened. You guys have a good relationship. Outside the door, the black-haired girl stood there and looked in the direction where Sharon disappeared. Ray Minkai smiled and casually changed the topic. If I really see Dr. Serene later, what should I do? The black-haired girl wasn't her, but Lakis Klein, who once again appeared with the face of Audrey Britannia, with the intention of contacting the people on the Minerva and to successfully contact Dr. Serene, who was confirmed to be under the protection of the Minerva. The existence of Audrey Britannia was indispensable, especially since Ray Minkai could only use a mask to cover his face that was probably already famous in Zaft. What else can I do? Continue to approach Dr. Serene in the name of Audrey Summers. I believe Dr. Serene won't expose my existence. Lakis blinked mischievously and said with a sweet smile, Is that so? Then, when we meet with the people on the Minerva, please stand behind me for the time being, Your Highness. Yes, Night King. In fact, Ray Minkai and Lakis weren't the only people participating in this meeting. As an escort, and also as an official envoy of the Britannia Empire, Ray Minkai alone wasn't enough to complete this mission. Therefore, Athelum participated in this meeting as an assistant. Your Highness, Ambassador, the preparations are complete. We can set off at any time. This wasn't. At the end of the passage, a dignified young lady, who had put on a white court dress and had her soft and beautiful blonde hair carefully dressed, was leading her vice guards to welcome Lei Minkai and Lakis. Neat and gorgeous uniforms. His face was full of energy. Tall and strong postures. This was the wiser guards that made Talia and the others dumbfounded. Hey, really? Are those people role-playing? Looking at the gorgeous military uniforms worn by the wiser guards, Luna Maria, who was standing behind Talia, couldn't help but poke True Flying Bird's arm with her arm. True Flying Bird shook her head and didn't answer Luna Maria. Luna Maria frowned slightly, looked past True Flying Bird, and looked at Ray, but found that Ray was staring at the front. Ray, what are you looking at? Surrounded by the gorgeous wiser guards, a man and two women slowly walked out and walked toward the welcoming team led by Talia. What Luna Maria was most concerned about was the man whose face was covered by a white gold-rimmed mask. Is that the pilot? Is he the leader here? While Luna Maria was puzzled, Ray Minkai, Lakis, and Athelum came in front of Talia. I'm Zaft, captain of the Minerva, Talia Karates. Talia took the lead in introducing herself and led everyone to salute Ray Minkai. Britannia Empire, Night K. Facing the experience of Talia and others, Ray Minkai responded with the Britannia Empire's Night Salute, while Lakis and Athelum responded with court etiquette. Such a strange scene made Talia frown secretly, but she didn't say anything. She was more concerned about the Britannia Empire, mentioned by Ray Minkai. According to Talia's knowledge, the Britannia Empire didn't exist on the Earth she was familiar with. Talia, who had originally thought that she would be able to obtain more information after coming into contact with him, suddenly felt even more doubts surging in her mind. And these doubts may not be answered for a while. That was because the beam of light that Talia viewed as a great threat had once again descended from the sky, outlining a beautiful yet dangerous figure. Okay, there's a situation. Beta appeared once again, and the number is rapidly increasing. I'm afraid it won't take long for them to notice our existence. Sharon, is it those unknown force fields? Yes. In a short period of time, the energy reaction of those unknown force fields suddenly jumped to an astonishing level. Beta also appeared at that time. Her premonition became reality. Number? Type? It's now increasing at a compound speed. Currently, we haven't found any individuals related to the light level. After Ray Minkai nodded, he looked at Talia and apologized. Sorry, Captain Talia. This isn't a good time for us to sit down properly. We need to deal with uninvited guests here. Wait, Talia naturally heard the conversation between Ray Minkai and Sharon clearly. Your Excellency Knight, although we don't know how those monsters appeared, it's very likely that they chased us here. Therefore, we should do our part. After saying that, Talia directly called out the trio. Ray, really Luna Maria? Prepare to attack. Yes. The trio replied in unison. Ray Minkai didn't object, nor did he stop them. He only glanced at the trio. Follow me if you're not afraid of death. Before True Flying Bird and Luna Maria could express their objections, Ray Minkai's voice sounded first. This was because a red warning box had popped up in front of the trio's eyes. Warning: a highly threatening individual named Light Class has been discovered. Warning: a highly threatening individual named Light Class has been discovered. Behind the flashing red lights was the back of Lancelot King's sword as he rushed towards the enemy. Light level. This was a monster that the Minerva and the trio had never encountered before. Based on the description and illustration in the data, the monster with the terrifying large eyeballs had the ability to shoot high-energy lasers in an instant. This was undoubtedly the most terrifying threat to the MS and the battleship. However, when faced with such a terrifying monster, Lancelot's King's sword charged toward the enemy without any hesitation. He charged toward the asteroid belt that was constantly colliding with each other and emitting bursts of dazzling light. He charged toward the enemy that was tearing apart the death radiance. Kai, the appearance of Light Class has been detected. The coordinates have been marked on the screen. Ray Minkai looked up. Behind the growing and denser red dots, the beta symbols representing Light Class, Heavy Light Class, and even Super Heavy Light Class popped up crazily. At a glance, the number was about to break through 3 digits. It's still the same. Beta. Suddenly, a ripple appeared in front of Lancelot King's sword, as if something had hit the dimensional barrier that enveloped Lancelot King's sword. It's a laser attack. At this distance, it's a super heavy light class attack. In an instant, Sharon, who had been paying attention to the movements in the gravel belt, immediately locked onto the attacker. Moreover, the attack seemed to be the prelude to a symphonic music, causing the ripples around Lancelot King's sword to dance crazily. This time was locked onto dodge, block. No, Ray Minkai did not choose any of these options. Instead, just like the last time against the beta, he directly rushed forward. In front of the dimensional barrier that could even devour light, the terrifying super heavy light class attack was just a joke. The only thing Ray Minkai had to pay attention to was that the armed composite wings that he had spread out in advance would not be noticed by these beta. Otherwise, even if Lancelot King's sword had the unbreakable shield, he would definitely fall into a predicament where he would be caught in the dark. At the same time, Real Flying Bird, Ray, and Luna Maria also received orders from the commanding throne. Real, Ray, Luna Maria, under the premise of ensuring your own safety, support Sir Knight K. Talia, who was standing in the command center of the royal throne, gave this ambiguous order. However, it was a very realistic order. Yes. The moment the light that was like the brilliance of the scorching sun in the sky rose from the gravel belt, the light level at the back of the Beta army evaporated in an instant. In an instant, it was a moment of life and death. The moment the light rose, nearly half of the Beta army and Lancelot King's sword, who was rampaging among them, were drowned. Moreover, in the next second, it rushed straight to the throne in the distance. Danger! Retreat! Amid the harsh warning was Lei's hurried shout. However, the moment Lei's voice sounded, countless translucent, flickering fluorescent octagonal light screens appeared, enveloping the bodies of the three-man team. Light level, incomparably dazzling. The beam of light that was enough to burn everything and bestow death to all things came crashing down, violently hitting the defensive force field formed by countless octagonal light screens. The terrifying energy impact became the dominator of the battlefield at this moment, suppressing all the noise, leaving only the insufferably arrogant brilliance that could destroy everything. The turbulent vibration continued to shake the throne. However, in the battle command hall, the turbulent vibration could not be felt at all. They could only feel the terrifying power of the beam of light that drowned half of the Beta army and Lancelot King's sword as soon as it appeared through the big screen in front of them. The pressure brought by the silence weighed heavily on Talia's heart. In Talia's memory, this scene in front of her was probably only similar to the genesis used by Zaft in the battle with Yekindue. At the same time, the shocked Talia forced herself to calm down and looked at Aethelum and Lacus, who called herself Audrey Britannia. They're not worried about the man called Night K? Could it be the moment when Rei Ming-Kai's Lancelot King's sword was submerged in the beam of light? Talia saw it clearly. All of a sudden, Talia seemed to have thought of something. She quickly turned her gaze to the screen that was shaking slightly. Still alive. At the bottom right of the big screen, the symbol representing Lancelot King's sword's health came into Talia's eyes. How is this possible? How can he be fine after being hit by such an attack? The terrifying torrent of light gradually faded away, leaving behind countless charred wreckage and the defensive force field that could keep the throne and the three-person team unscathed even if they were hit directly by the torrent of light. No, in the dead space composed of charred wreckage, a figure once again appeared in this world under the protection of darkness. The dimensional barrier system is overloaded. Estimated to restart time is 72 hours. Rei Ming-Kai lowered his gaze and looked at the small projection screen on his right hand, nodding slightly. The dimensional barrier is not invincible.